F1 is making changes that will affect the competitive order. Former Red Bull driver exposes Red Bull's secrets, and Toto gives his final verdict on Verstappen to Mercedes. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Today, we're diving into a bold prediction that's sending shockwaves through the paddock. Jacques Villeneuve, the 1997 F1 world champion, says the real test for Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari isn't happening now. It's coming in 2026. That's right, 2025? Just the warm-up. A season of frustration, miscommunication, and adaptation. But 2026? That's when the battle for supremacy with teammate Charles Leclerc will truly ignite. Let's unpack why Villeneuve believes everything resets next year and what it means for Hamilton's legacy. Imagine rebuilding everything from scratch. A brand new car, new engine rules, and equal footing for every driver. That's not just exciting, it's a reset button on Formula One. And in that new world, Hamilton's adaptation, or lack of it, could define his Ferrari chapter. What's at stake isn't just titles, but pride, identity, and whether he can thrive in a radically different environment. Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari was one of the most anticipated transitions in F1 history. But as the opening races of 2025 unfolded, it became clear this wasn't going to be a seamless romance. He's yet to stand on the podium, while Charles Leclerc has climbed there 5 times, building a 42-point lead in the Drivers' Championship. Hamilton even called himself useless after a poor qualifying exit in Hungary. Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur later admitted that both he and Hamilton underestimated the magnitude of the adaptation challenge. After all, Hamilton had spent nearly 2 decades in the Mercedes environment. Now, he had to adjust to an entirely different Ferrari culture, with its unique communication style, decision-making processes, and intense spotlight. Jacques Villeneuve has noticed this too. He says Hamilton is only now starting to grasp just how different everything is at Ferrari. It's not just the car setup, it's the way strategies are called, the way information is relayed, and the expectations that come from fans, media, and the team itself. So why does Villeneuve believe 2026 is the real confrontation? Because it brings a clean slate. The current SF25 car was designed with Leclerc's preferences in mind, giving him a natural advantage. But in 2026, everything changes. Brand new chassis, new engine regulations, a level playing field. No one gets the benefit of familiarity. That means true talent and adaptability will shine. And for Hamilton, it means a chance to erase the excuses of car bias or unfamiliar setups. Villeneuve frames this as the moment where Hamilton's Ferrari legacy will be decided. If he can outpace Leclerc in a brand new era, it will be one of the most impressive achievements of his career. If not, it could mark the closing chapter of his time as a dominant force in Formula One. Think about the psychology at play here. Fresh start, the new regulations strip away existing advantages. Every driver begins equally, pressure resets. Legacy in the making. Hamilton was already a legend at Mercedes. Now, to stamp his mark at Ferrari, he must conquer unfamiliar territory. The team dynamic. Ferrari is renowned for its intensity and scrutiny. Leclerc has momentum. Hamilton must prove he can perform under radically different methods. And finally, narrative reversal. Overcoming a tough 2025 to dominate in 2026 isn't just winning. It's a redemption arc. Fans live for that storyline. By building suspense around this reset, we can see why Villeneuve believes 2026 will be the true moment of truth. And it's not just about Hamilton. It's about how 2 top-tier drivers handle the same fresh challenge. So what should we watch for as we approach 2026? First, off-season changes, how Ferrari adapts its car architecture and systems. Will they lean toward Hamilton's preferences or Leclerc's? Second, pre-season testing dynamics, who shows pace first? Early form could predict intra-team balance. Third, communication improvements. Has Hamilton found his rhythm with Ferrari's methodology, or is confusion still creeping in? Fourth, emotional resilience. How does Hamilton respond when things go wrong? Can he stay composed under Ferrari's intense scrutiny? And fifth, Leclerc's counter. He knows the team. If he adapts quicker, Hamilton may once again find himself chasing. Between now and then, the stakes couldn't be higher. For Hamilton, it's about proving that his talent transcends machinery, environments, and eras. For Leclerc, it's about cementing himself as Ferrari's true number one driver in the face of one of the greatest the sport has ever seen. So, here's the story we'll be watching next year. 2026 isn't just another season, it's Hamilton's crucible at Ferrari. A reset, a battle, a legends test. Will he emerge as Ferrari's king, or will Leclerc steal the throne in a season of pure, fresh competition? The drama is brewing, and between now and then, the anticipation is everything. What if I told you that one of Formula One's most outspoken drivers just hinted at a truth so controversial? He said it can't be said. Pierre Gasly has just dropped a cryptic bombshell about his former teammate Yuki Tsunoda, and his words are sending shockwaves through the paddock. Today, we're going to unpack exactly what Gasly said, why it matters, and how it reveals the intense, cutthroat reality behind the scenes at Red Bull and its junior teams. Let's dive in. Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda spent 2 full seasons as teammates at AlphaTauri, now known as RB, building a bond that went far beyond just sharing garage space. Gasly knows Tsunoda better than most, both as a driver and as a person. So when Gasly was asked about Tsunoda's performance this season, everyone expected a straightforward, diplomatic answer. Instead, Gasly smiled, paused, and dropped this cryptic statement. There's stuff that can't be said, but it's not an easy situation for him. Think about that for a second. In Formula One, drivers are trained to give polished, politically correct answers. For Gasly to say there are things he can't talk about, especially about a friend, suggests there's a much deeper story here. And that's where the intrigue begins. First, let's talk about Yuki Tsunoda's situation. This year, he's been battling in a car that struggled for consistent pace. The RB team, while independent, still has close ties to Red Bull Racing, meaning expectations are sky high. Every lap, every race, every press conference is a test. And with Daniel Ricciardo now back in the mix, the pressure on Tsunoda has never been greater. Gasly's can't-be-said comment could be hinting at the political games, the inter-team dynamics, or even off-track pressures that Tsunoda is facing. Remember, Gasly himself has been on the receiving end of Red Bull's famously ruthless decision-making. He was promoted to the main team in 2019 and demoted just 12 races later. If anyone understands how brutal that system can be, it's him. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. When Gasly talks about Tsunoda, his tone changes. He's not criticizing him, he's defending him. He went on to praise Tsunoda's growth as a driver, saying that Yuki has matured massively since his rookie year. Gasly highlighted how Tsunoda has learned to control his emotions, sharpen his racecraft, and adapt under extreme pressure. From a psychology perspective, this is important. Humans naturally respond to underdog stories, and Gasly's framing of Tsunoda as a talented driver battling unseen challenges taps directly into that emotional trigger. Viewers feel empathy, and empathy keeps us watching. But let's not forget the other side of the story. Red Bull's driver program is notorious for expecting instant results. If Tsunoda doesn't deliver, his seat could be in danger. And with rising stars like Liam Lawson waiting in the wings, there's no shortage of replacements. Gasly's words then take on a new weight. By saying it's not an easy situation and that there's more going on behind the scenes, he's essentially warning fans, don't judge Tsunoda solely by the results you see on TV. And here's where the tension really spikes. If there are political pressures, team dynamics, or development issues at play, that means Tsunoda could be fighting battles the public will never fully see. It's like an iceberg. The race results are just the tip, but the real struggles are hidden beneath the surface. Gasly also knows the mental toll this can take. In the high-stakes world of F1, performance isn't just about skill. It's about confidence, stability, and trust in your team. One small crack in that foundation can snowball into mistakes, lost points, and shattered career momentum. Think about the subtle power of Gasly's statement. By not revealing the full details, it creates curiosity. It makes fans and the media lean in closer. What exactly is happening inside RB? What's the real story between Tsunoda, Ricciardo, and the Red Bull hierarchy? This is classic curiosity gap psychology. The mind hates unanswered questions, and it keeps us hooked until we find the missing piece. But perhaps the most telling part is Gasly's loyalty. Despite moving on to Alpine, he's still publicly defending Tsunoda, showing a bond that goes beyond contracts and corporate branding. In a sport often driven by self-interest, that kind of loyalty stands out, and it resonates with fans. Now, zooming out for a moment, what does this mean for the rest of the season? If Tsunoda can push through the pressure, silence the critics, and deliver strong performances, it could be one of the most inspiring turnarounds of the year. But if the stuff that can't be said is as serious as Gasly hints, then we could be watching the beginning of a very different storyline, one that ends with a major shakeup in the Red Bull driver lineup. Formula One history is full of these behind-the-scenes battles. Think about drivers like Mark Webber, who famously said, "Not bad for a number 2 driver," after feeling sidelined at Red Bull. Or Sergio Perez, who's had to constantly prove himself alongside Max Verstappen. In each case, the public story and the private reality were two very different things. Gasly's comments suggest Tsunoda might be living that same split reality right now. So where does this leave us? On the edge of our seats. Every qualifying session, every race start, every team radio message could carry hints about what's really happening. And until Gasly or someone else decides to lift the curtain, all we can do is watch, speculate, and read between the lines. One thing's for sure, the battle for seats in Formula One is as fierce as the battle for points on the track. And for Yuki Tsunoda, 2025 could be the season that defines his career, for better or for worse. Gasly's cryptic warning has given us all something to think about. And if you've been following Formula One long enough, you know that when a driver says there are things that can't be said, it usually means the truth is far more dramatic than anyone realizes. So, the next time you see Tsunoda on the grid, remember, there's a whole other race happening behind the scenes, and we might only be getting the smallest glimpse of it. If you follow Formula One, you know one thing for sure. Mercedes does not like being second best. But today's story might just surprise you, because Toto Wolff has admitted that a major upgrade to the W16 is heading straight for the trash. Yes, you heard that right. After months of work, money, and engineering genius, an entire part is going in the bin. But why? And what does this mean for Mercedes' season? Let's break it down. Before we dive into the details, think about this. In Formula One, success isn't just about building the fastest car. It's about making tough decisions. And sometimes, those decisions mean walking away from something you've poured your heart into. This is the story of how Mercedes made that call, and why it could change the direction of their season. Let's rewind. Over the winter, Mercedes were under huge pressure. After Red Bull's dominance, the Silver Arrows knew they couldn't afford another year of almost there. The W16 was supposed to be their big step forward, a car designed from the ground up to get Lewis Hamilton and George Russell back into winning territory. One of the big changes? The rear suspension. This wasn't just a small tweak. We're talking about a completely new design, developed with the hope of unlocking more grip, better tire performance, and faster cornering speeds. For months, engineers worked on this upgrade, running simulations, testing in the wind tunnel, crunching data. The expectations? Huge. This was meant to be a game changer. But here's where reality hit. When the team finally brought this suspension concept into real-world testing, the results were underwhelming. In some cases, they were worse than what they already had. Imagine working on something for months, believing it will give you the edge, only to find it slows you down. That's brutal, but it's also the truth of F1. Toto Wolff, never one to sugarcoat things, summed it up perfectly. He admitted, it's going to end up in the bin. And that wasn't him being dramatic. It's literally happening. The upgrade, which cost millions to develop, will not be used. Not even as a backup. Gone. Now, here's where the psychology of this decision kicks in. In business, sports, and life, we call this the sunk cost fallacy. It's when you keep investing in something just because you've already put time or money into it, even if it's not working. But Mercedes didn't fall for that trap. They recognized that clinging to a bad upgrade could cost them even more. More races lost, more points dropped, and more frustration for Hamilton and Russell. So, what's next? Wolff says the team is now fully focused on the next set of upgrades, coming in future races. This isn't just about replacing a failed part, it's about shifting the entire development philosophy to what's actually working on track. And here's something important. While fans might see this as a setback in F1, fast failure can be a strength. The quicker you identify what doesn't work, the faster you can focus on what does. Think of it like this. In racing, the worst mistake isn't making the wrong call. It's realizing it was wrong and then refusing to change. Mercedes, for all their pride and prestige, are showing they're willing to pivot. But let's address the big question fans have been asking. How does this impact Lewis Hamilton's final season with Mercedes? Hamilton has made it clear he wants to go out on a high. While this suspension upgrade might be gone, the hope is that its removal actually clears the way for better, more reliable gains in performance. Wolff himself hinted that there's more to come, and that the focus now is on building a car that gives their drivers confidence in every race situation. For George Russell, this could be equally crucial. As the young driver in the team, he's looking to establish himself as the clear future leader. A car that's predictable and consistent will give him a much stronger platform to do that. And then there's the battle against Red Bull. Right now, Red Bull has set the standard so high that any mistake by a rival team gets punished instantly. If Mercedes had stuck with a bad upgrade, that gap could have grown wider, maybe even beyond recovery for the season. By cutting their losses now, Mercedes is essentially saying, we're not here to finish second. We're here to find what works, no matter how uncomfortable the truth might be. If you're a longtime F1 fan, you know this isn't the first time a big team has thrown an upgrade in the bin. Ferrari, McLaren, even Red Bull have had development paths that turned out to be dead ends. The difference is how you react to it. Some teams panic and spiral. Others double down on what's working and come back stronger. Mercedes is betting on the latter. There's also a lesson here beyond F1, and it's something Wolff himself has spoken about before. Success often requires knowing when to let go. You can't be emotionally attached to a bad idea, no matter how much effort you've put into it. The faster you cut it loose, the faster you can move towards something better. That mindset is what turned Mercedes into an 8-time Constructors' Champion, and it's the same mindset they're hoping will carry them through this latest challenge. So to sum it up, Mercedes developed a major rear suspension upgrade for the W16. They hoped it would transform their car's performance. It didn't. The data said no, and Toto Wolff confirmed it's going straight to the bin. Instead of forcing it to work, the team is pivoting, shifting resources toward upgrades that actually deliver results on the stopwatch. Is this the moment Mercedes turns their season around? Or will Red Bull continue to dominate while the Silver Arrows search for answers? One thing's for sure, in Formula One, standing still means falling behind, and Mercedes is making sure that doesn't happen. And that, my friends, is why sometimes throwing something away can be the smartest move you ever make. Sergio Perez is coming back to F1 with a shocking new deal. Hamilton's secret contract clause has been revealed, and Toto gives his final verdict on Verstappen to Mercedes. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Imagine this. It's the Italian Grand Prix at Monza in 2025. The engines are screaming, the crowd is electric, and then an announcement drops that sends the entire Formula One world into a frenzy. Sergio Checo Perez is back, not with Red Bull, not with Aston Martin, but with Cadillac. Yes, you heard that right. In one of the most unexpected twists in modern F1 history, Sergio Perez is set to make a sensational comeback in 2026, driving for the brand new Cadillac Formula One team. And today, we're breaking down exactly what's happening, why Cadillac chose Perez, and what this could mean for the future of the sport. So buckle up, because this story has it all: surprise, strategy, and a comeback that nobody saw coming. First, let's set the stage. At the end of the 2024 season, Perez's time at Red Bull came to a close. 2025 was looking like a quiet year for him. A season away from the grid, time to regroup, and maybe even hint at retirement. But behind the scenes, something huge was brewing. Cadillac, the legendary American luxury car maker, had been quietly preparing their entry into Formula One for 2026. They'd secured their spot as the sport's 11th team, with Ferrari supplying their power units. This was no half-hearted project. Cadillac wanted to arrive with a bang, and in the ultra-competitive world of Formula One, a big entrance means two things. One, you need a fast car. Two, you need a driver who can deliver results and bring star power. Enter Sergio Perez. Think about it. Cadillac's debut season will be under a global spotlight. They can't afford a rookie struggling to adapt. They need someone proven, someone with podiums, race wins, and the experience to guide a brand new team through the chaos of an F1 season. Perez checks every box. Over a decade in Formula One, multiple wins against the very best, a reputation for managing tires better than almost anyone on the grid. And perhaps most importantly, a massive fan base across North and Latin America. From Cadillac's perspective, the choice is genius. Not only does Perez bring racing credibility, but he also connects the brand with millions of passionate fans in key markets. This is more than just a driver signing, it's a marketing masterstroke. Now here's where things get even more interesting. The official announcement isn't set to happen until Monza next year. Why? Simple. Timing is everything. Revealing the deal at Monza, one of the most iconic venues in F1, guarantees maximum attention. The Italian Grand Prix is already a magnet for global media, and dropping a bombshell there ensures Cadillac gets the biggest possible stage for their big news. And let's be honest, Formula One loves a bit of theater, but this isn't just about Cadillac and Perez. This move could shake up the entire driver market. With Perez's seat spoken for in 2026, teams looking ahead to the new regulations will need to adjust their plans. We could see earlier contract extensions, surprise exits, and maybe even a bidding war for the remaining top seats. And don't forget, Cadillac isn't entering F1 alone. They're arriving in the same year as the massive 2026 regulation changes. New engines, new chassis rules, a complete reset. For Perez, this is a golden opportunity. In a brand new era, the playing field is more level. If Cadillac nails their car design, Perez could go from a year off to fighting for podiums again. Now, let's talk psychology for a moment, because this comeback isn't just about strategy, it's about narrative. Humans are hardwired to root for a redemption story. We love to see someone fall, disappear, and then return stronger than ever. Think about it. Michael Schumacher's comeback, Fernando Alonso's comeback. Each time, fans rallied behind them, not just because they were talented, but because their story spoke to something deep inside us. The idea that you can rise again after being counted out. Perez's journey fits that template perfectly. Let's rewind a bit. Early in his career, Perez fought his way up from modest beginnings in Guadalajara, Mexico, to the pinnacle of motorsport. He wasn't born into a racing dynasty with unlimited resources. Every seat, every race, every point, he had to fight for it. He went from midfield teams like Sauber and Force India to finally getting his big break with Red Bull, where he played a crucial role in back-to-back Constructors' Championships. But as is often the case in F1, the spotlight can be brutal. Inconsistency, team politics, and the relentless pace of teammate Max Verstappen eventually pushed him out. For some drivers, that's the end, but not for Perez. That's why this Cadillac move is so fascinating. It's not just a return to the grid, it's a chance to be the face of a brand new project, to build something from the ground up, to write the next chapter of his career on his own terms. Cadillac, meanwhile, gets exactly what they need: a seasoned driver to anchor the team, provide feedback to engineers, and give sponsors a name they can market globally. And make no mistake, Cadillac isn't joining F1 to be a backmarker. Their entry is backed by General Motors, a giant with the resources to invest heavily. Partnering with Ferrari for power units means they're starting with proven technology. Now, some might be skeptical. Can a new team really compete straight away? History says it's tough. Haas had early flashes of speed but have struggled in recent years. Even big manufacturers like Toyota never quite cracked the code. But the 2026 regulations could change the game. With new rules, the gap between established teams and newcomers could shrink dramatically. If Cadillac plays their cards right, and with a driver like Perez in the cockpit, they could surprise a lot of people. Before we wrap up, let's look at the bigger picture. Formula One is more popular in the United States than ever before. Miami, Austin, Las Vegas, 3 races on American soil. Netflix's Drive to Survive pulling in millions of new fans. Cadillac joining the grid is perfectly timed to ride that wave. Pairing an American brand with a North American superstar driver like Perez could be the perfect formula to capture hearts and headlines. It's not just about lap times, it's about identity. It's about telling a story that fans want to be part of. So here's the bottom line. In 2025, Sergio Perez will be watching from the sidelines, but in 2026, he'll be back, wearing Cadillac colors, aiming to prove that his story is far from over. Whether Cadillac hits the ground running or faces a steep learning curve, one thing's certain: this will be one of the most closely watched debuts in recent F1 history. And if Perez pulls it off, if he takes this new team to the podium, it won't just be a comeback, it'll be a legacy-defining moment. Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari contract might just be one of the boldest moves in Formula One history. Reports say there's a clause that gives Hamilton the power to decide if he stays for 2027, no matter how the 2025 and 2026 seasons go. In other words, Ferrari can't drop him, even if he's underperforming. This is rare in F1, and it's causing quite a stir. Let's break down why this is such a big deal, what it means for Ferrari, and what it says about Hamilton's legacy. When Hamilton announced his switch from Mercedes to Ferrari starting in 2025, the headlines called it a multi-year deal. Most assumed it covered 2025 and 2026, but new reports claim that at the end of 2026, the decision to continue for a third year rests solely with Hamilton. Not Ferrari, not team principal Fred Vasseur, just Lewis himself. Why is this controversial? First, it flips the usual power dynamic. In F1, teams almost always control the option to keep or drop a driver. Here, Ferrari has effectively handed that control to the driver. Second, it means Hamilton's position isn't tied to his on-track performance. Even if he has a poor season, he could still choose to stay. Third, Hamilton isn't just a driver. He's one of the most marketable athletes in the world. His presence brings sponsorship, global attention, and brand prestige. That alone makes him a valuable asset regardless of results. But there's a flip side. By giving Hamilton this option, Ferrari limits its own flexibility. Let's say a rising star emerges in 2026 or a top driver becomes available. If Hamilton decides to stay, Ferrari's seat is locked. That could create tension inside the team, especially with Charles Leclerc as his teammate. Now let's look at Hamilton's start with Ferrari. So far, his 2025 season has been tough. 14 races in, he hasn't reached the podium, while Leclerc has scored multiple strong finishes. In Hungary, after a poor qualifying session, Hamilton even called himself useless and suggested Ferrari might need to replace him. That comment hit headlines immediately. But despite the frustration, he's been deeply involved in improving the car, providing detailed feedback, pushing for design changes, and trying to rebuild Ferrari into a championship contender. So why would Ferrari agree to such a clause? There are a few possible reasons. One is negotiation leverage. Hamilton was the hottest free agent when his Mercedes deal ended. If Ferrari wanted to secure him, they may have had to offer terms no other team would. Another is commercial value. Even if results aren't there, Hamilton's global appeal boosts Ferrari's brand and attracts sponsors. Finally, Ferrari might believe that Hamilton's experience and leadership will pay off in the long term, especially with the 2026 regulation changes that could reshuffle the competitive order. For Hamilton, this clause is a safety net and a power move rolled into one. If Ferrari's 2026 car isn't competitive, he could walk away without being forced out. If the team shows promise, he can stay and fight for that elusive 8th title. Either way, he's in control of his own future, something most drivers never get. For the rest of the grid, this changes the game. It means one of the sport's most sought-after seats could be unavailable until Hamilton decides otherwise. That could impact the career moves of drivers like Carlos Sainz, young talents in F2, or even big names who might have considered Ferrari in the future. It also sends a message to other drivers. With enough leverage, you can negotiate more control over your career. But is this a smart move for Ferrari? That's the million-dollar question. On one hand, they get Hamilton, seven-time champion, massive fan base, unmatched experience. On the other, they give up control, which is risky in a sport where timing and adaptability are everything. If Hamilton struggles and still decides to stay, Ferrari could be stuck in a tough spot. If he thrives, the gamble will look like genius. There's also the psychological factor. Knowing he can't be dropped might give Hamilton confidence and security, which could translate into better performance. Or it could create pressure from fans and media if results don't match expectations, leading to awkward questions about whether he should still be in the seat. This clause could also set a precedent. Other top drivers might start demanding similar terms, changing the balance of power in F1 contracts. Teams may resist, but for the biggest stars, the demand for their services might outweigh the risks. At the end of the day, this is about control, legacy, and trust. Ferrari is betting that Hamilton will deliver, and Hamilton is betting that Ferrari will give him the machinery to fight at the front. If both sides hold up their end, this could be remembered as a masterstroke. If not, it could be one of the most talked about contract decisions in years. So, what does this mean for the fans? More intrigue, more speculation, and more reasons to watch. Every race in 2026 could feel like part of a bigger story, not just about the championship, but about whether Hamilton chooses to continue his Ferrari chapter. The bottom line? Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari contract gives him unprecedented control over his future, and it's shaking up the traditional team-driver relationship in Formula One. Whether it leads to glory or regret, one thing is certain: it's a game changer. Imagine standing at the very edge of innovation, where the split-second decisions in a wind tunnel today shape championship cars of tomorrow. That's exactly where Aston Martin finds itself, with the legendary Adrian Newey now calling their drawing board home. In this video, we're diving deep into how Newey's arrival, alongside a brand new ultra-modern wind tunnel, is finally unlocking Aston Martin's ambitious vision for the all-new 2026 F1 era. Stay tuned, because this isn't just engineering, it's a revolution in motion. Let's set the context. In early 2025, Aston Martin officially switched on their long-awaited in-house wind tunnel at their Silverstone AMR Technology campus. This sleek 60,580 cubic meter facility houses everything from additive manufacturing tools to a model build area designed specifically for advanced 60% scale car models, enabling lightning-fast testing and efficiency. Not only does this put them in control of development timelines, it ends their long reliance on Mercedes's shared tunnel. Then there's the man of the moment, Adrian Newey. The F1 car design maestro, fresh from his championship-laden stint at Red Bull, joined Aston Martin in March 2025 as their managing technical partner and major shareholder. His track record is unrivaled. He's responsible for iconic cars spanning Williams, McLaren, and Red Bull. And now, he's drawing ideas for the 2026 regulations at Aston Martin. Here's where things get exciting. According to team principal Andy Cowell, Newey's arrival has sparked a creative surge in the wind tunnel team. Engineers are experimenting with more adventurous architectural ideas, bold aerodynamic components that go beyond incremental tweaks. Cowell even revealed that the time from Newey's drawing board to seeing a model in the tunnel now takes just 1/3 of what it used to. It's not just about speed, it's about mindset. Cowell described how Newey's presence has ignited real excitement and ownership across the aero department. Suddenly, there's a palpable energy, not just about building cars, but about redefining the rules under 2026's active aero regime. Why is that vital? Because early regulation cycles often provide opportunities for innovation before convergence sets in. Newey has done this before. Think McLaren's dominant MP413 in 1998 or Red Bull's RB5 in 2009, and he's doing it again. Beyond culture, the actual technology is a leap forward. The new wind tunnel comes equipped with sophisticated measurement systems and integrated model building facilities, meaning everything from design to test is happening under one roof. No more loading models into vans and praying they arrive intact. And there's more. A recent collaboration with ARM, the AI compute experts, has enabled real-time data analysis from thousands of sensors embedded within a 40% scale model. This allows engineers to understand airflow with unprecedented granularity, even within the FIA's strict wind tunnel time limits. Put simply, Aston Martin now has both the engineering genius of Newey and the digital infrastructure to match, giving them the freedom to explore radical aero ideas at pace. Here's the strategic play. Andy Cowell and the team are taking a bold approach, shifting their focus firmly to the 2026 car. In fact, they've even conserved wind tunnel hours, holding off full 2025 usage so Newey could maximize his impact on the new regulations. 2025, in many ways, becomes a transitional sandbox. Fernando Alonso, reflecting on the journey, sees it too. The hope and promise rest in what's coming next. Alonso himself called Newey's hiring and the new infrastructure the most important day in the team's history. According to Cowell, the team is setting exceptionally high targets, not settling for good, but shooting beyond great. He's clear, they want a winning culture, and it starts with questioning everything. Even after a bad weekend, engineers should feel they missed out. That mindset is coming directly from Newey's influence. So, what does all this mean? Simply put, Aston Martin is architecting their future. They've built the infrastructure, secured the expertise, and are setting the cultural tone. If they execute well, 2026 could represent their leap to the very front of the grid. If you're excited about Aston Martin's 2026 project, hit that like button. Drop a comment with the radical aero idea you think we might soon see. And don't forget to subscribe for exclusive breakdowns as the new rules unfold. Buckle up, because this is the next great chapter in Formula One evolution. Have you ever wondered if there's a hidden advantage lurking beneath the surface of Formula One? A secret shortcut that not everyone can see until it becomes undeniable. Today, we're diving into the heart of a controversy that's reignited around the sport, the AB team model, and why McLaren is demanding fairness now more than ever. Picture this. Red Bull owns two F1 teams, the powerhouse Red Bull Racing and its sister team, Racing Bulls. Now imagine staff and leadership shifting instantly between them. That's exactly what happened when Laurent Mekies jumped straight from Racing Bulls to become the CEO and team principal of Red Bull Racing without any gardening leave or delay. McLaren sees a problem and says so loudly, and there's more brewing beneath the surface. Here's the backdrop. Until July 9th, 2025, Christian Horner helmed Red Bull Racing. He built the team from nothing into an empire, 8 drivers' championships and 6 constructors' titles. But internal tensions and controversies finally led to his dismissal. Enter Laurent Mekies, previously the head of Racing Bulls and a former Ferrari leader. He was installed immediately as Red Bull Racing CEO, while Alan Permani took over Racing Bulls. McLaren CEO Zak Brown had long criticized the AB team structure, calling it a real problem that compromised fairness and integrity in F1. Following Horner's departure, Brown declared, "Formula One is healthier without him." He praised Mekies' rise as a breath of fresh air, hoping it would usher F1 back toward respectful, track-focused competition. Why does McLaren care? Because when two teams fall under the same owner, the risk of shared intellectual property, coordinated strategy, and unfair insider advantage skyrockets, especially when leadership can shift overnight. No gaps, no cooling off period. That undermines the spirit of independent competition. Even Andrea Stella, McLaren's team principal, acknowledges it's complicated, but insists F1 must consider evolving rules around team independence and mandatory gardening periods when staff swap sides. So what happens next? The FIA is already drafting changes in F1's 2026 regulations to enforce mandatory gardening leave, preventing staff from bouncing instantly between co-owned teams. Here's the psychological angle. When we suspect imbalance, our trust fractures. McLaren is betting that rules reform can rebuild belief in fairness, in cause, in competition. And frankly, so are fans. Other evidence points to a larger trend in F1. Teams are increasingly structured with specialized leadership, split between commercial and technical roles, not one autocratic boss. McLaren has Zak Brown and Andrea Stella, Red Bull, under Mekis, is following this more engineered, siloed model. Contrast this with Horner's style, a flamboyant, firebrand leader who often crossed lines. His departure, according to Brown, is already shifting the tone toward a more professional paddock vibe. We're drawn to stories of power shifting, of David versus Goliath, of an underdog McLaren challenging a Goliath structure. That's exactly what's happening here. And watching a whole sport reset, engineer-wise, rule-wise, is compelling. So let's recap. 1. F1's AB team. Model, Red Bull Racing and Racing Bulls, raised fairness red flags. 2. Laurent Mekis jumped immediately from one to the other, spotlighting the problem. 3. McLaren's leadership demanded change. 4. FIA responded by crafting regulations to enforce gardening leave. 5. The sport is visibly shifting toward more modern, equitable management models. As we edge into a new era of governance in Formula One, one that's more technical, less political, we can't help but feel that change is good. It may even level the playing field and focus attention on racing, not drama. What do you think? Is McLaren paving the way for a fairer F1, or just playing politics? And do you think Mekis can deliver the race day performance Red Bull needs in 2025 and beyond? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep this conversation going. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Onward toward cleaner racing and a sport built to race, not bicker. Toto and Max have been spotted together as contact talks resume. Hamilton is under pressure after Ferrari's new reveal, and Red Bull is preparing changes for its second team. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Imagine this. You're on holiday, enjoying the sunshine, then overnight, the entire Formula One world thinks you're plotting a secret team switch. That's exactly what happened to Max Verstappen and Toto Wolff on their recent getaway to Sardinia. Today, we're diving into what really happened on that Mediterranean island, and why this story is more about coincidence than conspiracy. It's mid-July 2025. Formula One has just gone through a dramatic week after Red Bull's team principal Christian Horner was unexpectedly dismissed. Rumors are everywhere, tensions are high, and suddenly both Max Verstappen and Mercedes boss Toto Wolff are spotted in Sardinia at the same time. Yachts, private jets, paparazzi shots, this has all the ingredients of F1 drama. The speculation was instant. Could Verstappen be meeting Wolff to arrange a move to Mercedes? Photos began circulating online, showing the two in what looked like close proximity. Fans and pundits ran with it. But was there any truth to it? Or was this just another case of F1 gossip spinning out of control? First, let's look at the facts. Verstappen is locked into a Red Bull contract until 2028. Earlier in the year, there was talk about an exit clause if he fell outside the top 3 in the championship mid-season. But that clause is now closed. He's committed to Red Bull until at least the end of 2026. Mercedes, on the other hand, hasn't confirmed its driver lineup beyond this year, but all signs point to keeping George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. So what caused the frenzy? Tracking data showed both Verstappen's and Wolff's yachts anchored near Sardinia at the same time. That was enough for online sleuths to imagine private meetings and backroom deals. Former F1 driver Ralf Schumacher even joked that there was a good chance they had coffee together. From there, the internet did the rest, turning a coincidence into a full-blown conspiracy. Then came the denials. Toto Wolff told Austrian media that it was nothing more than chance. Just because two people are on holiday in the same place doesn't mean they're negotiating contracts. Verstappen laughed it off as well, saying he was busy swimming in the ocean and spending time with friends and family. He reminded everyone that Sardinia isn't a small island. There are a lot more people there than just him and Toto. But not everyone was convinced. One outlet reported that the photos were genuine and that Verstappen and Wolff really did meet, though purely for friendly reasons. Another suggested it was plausible they bumped into each other, given their personal relationship and similar holiday schedules. Still, there was no solid evidence of contract talks. So why did this rumor explode the way it did? The answer is human psychology. We're drawn to stories about power, drama, and betrayal. Our brains are wired to look for patterns, even when none exist. In F1, where every move can be strategic, a holiday meeting between a team boss and a star driver is irresistible fuel for speculation. The truth, however, is far less dramatic. Verstappen has reaffirmed his commitment to Red Bull for 2026. Red Bull sources say they never doubted his loyalty. Wolff has admitted that while conversations about the future have happened in the past, nothing definitive has been discussed. Mercedes, for now, is focused on the drivers it already has. So what can we learn from all this? Formula One thrives on narrative. Rumors, rivalries, and off-track drama keep fans engaged even when there's no racing. But sometimes the story gets ahead of reality. The Sardinia saga is a perfect example of how quickly coincidence can turn into a conspiracy in the F1 world. There are three key reasons this rumor stuck in people's minds. First, ambiguity. The driver market wasn't fully settled, so the unknown created a vacuum that rumors rushed to fill. Second, authority. When a respected former driver hints at something, it feels more credible, even if it's just speculation. And third, emotional stakes. Fans cared deeply about their heroes switching sides, and the idea of Verstappen in a Mercedes was too powerful to ignore. By leaving the story open-ended and allowing both denials and hints to circulate, interest stayed high. It was the perfect storm of curiosity and drama. Here's the reality. Verstappen and Wolff were in Sardinia at the same time. People saw it, and rumors flew. Both said it was nothing. A couple of sources suggested they met socially but not professionally. Verstappen is staying with Red Bull for 2026, and Mercedes is sticking with its likely lineup. That's the truth. Everything else is noise. So, was this just a coincidence? A calculated PR stunt? Or maybe a friendly chat with more meaning than they're letting on? Whatever the case, it shows how quickly a simple holiday can become front-page news in Formula One. And it proves that in F1, the drama doesn't stop when the cars aren't racing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe for more F1 stories, rumors, and analysis. Because in this sport, there's always more going on than meets the eye. Imagine this. You're one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history. 7 world championships, over 100 race wins, a name etched into the sport forever. And yet, some people still think you've got something to prove. That's exactly where Lewis Hamilton finds himself right now. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story that's shaking up the F1 world. A bold prediction from veteran Italian journalist Leo Torini, who believes Hamilton is about to embarrass Ferrari's critics and silence those who have treated him as a scapegoat. And trust me, the psychology behind this moment might just make 2025 one of the most fascinating seasons in modern F1 history. Let's start with this. Leo Torini is no stranger to the F1 paddock. He's seen decades of championship battles, political drama, and driver rivalries. And when he speaks, people in Italy listen. Recently, Torini came out swinging, saying Hamilton has been treated as a scapegoat in recent years. In other words, when things went wrong at Mercedes, whether it was a flawed car design, bad strategy calls, or internal tensions, some critics made it sound like Hamilton was the problem. But here's the thing. Psychology tells us that when someone is labeled as the scapegoat, they often respond with a surge of motivation to prove everyone wrong. It becomes deeply personal. It's no longer just about winning, it's about redemption. Now, let's talk about the red elephant in the room, Ferrari. The Scuderia hasn't won a driver's championship since Kimi Räikkönen in 2007. That's nearly 2 decades of missed opportunities. Torini himself called it embarrassing for a team with such a legendary history. And here's where the tension builds. Ferrari's loyal fan base, the Tifosi, aren't just passionate, they're demanding. They expect glory, not excuses. So when Hamilton joins in 2025, he's not just stepping into a new car, he's stepping into an emotional pressure cooker. But that's exactly the kind of high-stakes environment where legends are made or broken. Torini believes Hamilton will thrive at Ferrari for one simple reason. He's coming in with no fear, no baggage, and everything to gain. Think about it. Lewis has already proven himself 1,000 times over. His move to Ferrari isn't about survival, it's about legacy. And psychologically, when someone plays to win rather than to avoid failure, they unlock a different level of performance. Torini even hinted that Charles Leclerc, Ferrari's current golden boy, will benefit from Hamilton's arrival. Why? Because competition sharpens focus. It forces you to raise your game or risk being left behind. And let's be honest, watching Leclerc and Hamilton go wheel to wheel in the same machinery is the stuff F1 fans dream about. But let's not forget, not everyone is convinced. Some Ferrari insiders worry that Hamilton's arrival could disrupt the team dynamic. Others think he's past his prime. Here's the psychological twist. Seasoned champions often thrive on doubt. In fact, research shows that elite athletes sometimes need critics to fuel their drive. The more you tell them they can't, the more determined they become to prove that they can. Hamilton knows the score. He's seen legends before him, like Michael Schumacher, take the risk of moving teams late in their career. And yes, sometimes it works. Sometimes it's magic. Ferrari is betting that Hamilton's experience, mindset, and racecraft can break their championship drought. Hamilton is betting that Ferrari can give him the car he needs to fight at the very top again. It's a high-risk, high-reward play. If it works, Hamilton could retire as an 8-time champion and the man who brought Ferrari back to glory. If it fails, critics will say they saw it coming all along. But here's the thing, winners don't play it safe. And Hamilton has never been the kind of driver to settle for the easy option. 2025 won't just be another F1 season. It's shaping up to be a collision of eras. On one side, you have Max Verstappen and Red Bull, the unstoppable force of recent years. On the other, a rejuvenated Mercedes looking to bounce back. And in the middle of it all, Ferrari, with Hamilton and Leclerc trying to rewrite history. The psychological stakes? Every driver on that grid knows that if Hamilton pulls this off, it will be one of the greatest career moves in Formula One history. So why does this hit so hard with fans? Because at its core, it's a redemption story. It's the classic narrative we're wired to love, the underdog who refuses to stay down. Hamilton might be a global superstar, but in this specific chapter of his career, he's fighting for something even bigger than trophies. He's fighting to prove that age, criticism, and politics can't dim the fire of a true champion. And as Torini points out, when you combine that fire with Ferrari's hunger, the results could be explosive. If you're following this story, here are the big questions for next season. Will Ferrari give Hamilton a championship-winning car? How will Leclerc respond to sharing a garage with one of the greatest of all time? And perhaps the most important, if Hamilton wins, what does that mean for the legacy of both Mercedes and Ferrari? Imagine this, a man who built one of the most dominant dynasties in Formula One history, suddenly removed from the very team he transformed. That's the dramatic story of Christian Horner and Oracle Red Bull Racing in 2025. What exactly happened? Why was one of the sport's most successful team principals let go? And what lies ahead for Christian Horner? Could he return to F1 in a role even grander than before? Buckle up, because we're diving into the heart of Red Bull's seismic shakeup. For over 2 decades, Christian Horner steered Red Bull to extraordinary success. He joined the fledgling squad in 2005 and over 21 seasons guided them to 6 Constructors' Championships and 8 Drivers' titles, second only in F1 history to Ron Dennis's record. But everything unraveled in 2025. A dip in performance, key departures, including the legendary Adrian Newey, and internal tensions began to cloud the team's horizon. Red Bull, once untouchable, found itself mired in a crisis, 4th in the constructors' standings, while Max Verstappen trailed championship leader Oscar Piastri by a staggering margin. Helmut Marko, longtime advisor to Red Bull, confirmed the decision was rooted in performance. "If it doesn't work, the coach has to go," he said, comparing F1 to football. And so, on July 9th, 2025, Red Bull officially released Horner from his operational duties, ending an era. Laurent Mekies, previously the head of Racing Bulls, Red Bull's sister team, was elevated to CEO and team principal of Red Bull Racing. Marko praised Mekies' focused style. "He's more concentrated on racing, a people person, and already adjusting simulator details," he explained, signaling a sharper, streamlined leadership approach. Internally, leaders like Zak Brown of McLaren welcomed the shift, suggesting the paddock appears healthier without Horner's involvement in controversies and politics. Industry voices also weighed in. Ex-Haas boss Guenther Steiner suggested Horner's departure is unlikely to change the team's on-track performance immediately, pointing to the long development cycles of modern F1 cars. So, what's next for Christian Horner? According to former F1 driver Robert Dornbos, one thing was always missing from his reign at Red Bull: team ownership, a position akin to what Mercedes' Toto Wolff holds. Dornbos believes Horner isn't done with F1. He's expected to return in a few years, possibly in a role where he holds shares in a team, maybe Alpine under the guidance of Flavio Briatore, or perhaps even something entirely new. He's still only 51, Dornbos said. 20 years of experience, that was the only thing missing. The idea of Horner returning as a part owner or even founding his own team could shake up the grid in ways we haven't seen since Red Bull first entered the sport. Horner's story is compelling because it blends dominance, downfall, and the promise of redemption. People are naturally drawn to stories where a figure rises, falls, and has the chance to rise again. It's the classic hero's journey, only in the high-octane world of Formula One. The drama also taps into our curiosity. We want to know what happens next. Will he disappear from the spotlight, or will he come back stronger? That open question keeps the conversation alive among fans and media alike. Christian Horner, a figure who defined an era, has departed, but his story may not be over. From legendary triumphs to mid-season upheaval, his legacy lives on in every win Red Bull claimed under his leadership. Will he return with even more power as a team owner? Only time will tell. One thing's certain: Christian Horner's chapter in F1 is far from closed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into F1's latest dramas and untold stories. In the high-speed world of Formula One, change is the only constant. But what happens when a team decides to reinvent itself completely? Enter Racing Bulls, Red Bull's second team that's no longer just a shadow. Led by CEO Peter Bayer, Racing Bulls is not just racing on the track, they're racing into the future. Imagine a team that's not just about speed, but also about culture, identity, and connection. A team that speaks the language of Gen Z, blends fashion with performance, and is redefining what it means to be an F1 team. Sounds intriguing? Let's dive into how Racing Bulls is making this vision a reality. 2 years ago, Racing Bulls was known as AlphaTauri, a name that never quite resonated with fans. Under Peter Bayer's leadership, the team underwent a complete rebranding. Gone are the days of restrained liveries and unclear objectives. Now, Racing Bulls stands as a bold, independent entity with its own distinct identity. The departure of Franz Tost marked a turning point for the team. With Laurent Mekies stepping in as team principal and Peter Bayer as CEO, Racing Bulls embraced a new leadership structure. This shift allowed for fresh perspectives and strategies, propelling the team into a new era of innovation and success. Understanding the changing dynamics of F1's fan base, Racing Bulls has targeted Gen Z with a radical youth strategy. Leveraging Bayer's background in youth sports and his experience with the Youth Olympic Games, the team connects authentically with younger audiences. From music to fashion, Racing Bulls integrates cultural elements that resonate with today's youth, making F1 more accessible and relatable. Racing Bulls has transformed its digital presence, moving away from traditional corporate messaging. Their social media channels are vibrant and engaging, featuring behind-the-scenes content, driver personalities, and interactive posts. This approach not only entertains, but also builds a community around the team, fostering a deeper connection with fans. The team's driver lineup reflects its commitment to nurturing young talent. Liam Lawson, a rising star, has been promoted to Red Bull Racing, creating an opportunity for Isaac Hadjar to join Racing Bulls alongside Yuki Tsunoda. This dynamic duo brings energy and potential, embodying the team's forward-thinking philosophy. Racing Bulls goes beyond racing. They've created a brand that intertwines with music, fashion, and lifestyle. By aligning with partners that target Gen Z, Racing Bulls has positioned itself as a cultural icon, not just a racing team. Under Bayer's leadership, Racing Bulls has seen significant financial growth. The team's valuation soared to $1.25 billion, reflecting its successful rebranding and strategic direction. This financial stability allows Racing Bulls to invest in technology, talent, and fan engagement, ensuring long-term success. As F1 continues to evolve, Racing Bulls is at the forefront of this transformation. With a clear identity, a strong leadership team, and a deep connection with fans, Racing Bulls is not just participating in the sport, they're shaping its future. So, what do you think? Is Racing Bulls the future of Formula One? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into the world of F1. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updates on Racing Bulls and the exciting world of Formula One. Ferrari is admitting its mistakes with Hamilton. Red Bull is being exposed for more toxic behavior. And Aston has started testing its 2026 car. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari. It's the headline that shook the Formula One world. But according to Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur, both Hamilton and the team may have seriously underestimated just how tough this challenge will be. Today, we're diving deep into why this dream partnership could be one of the most difficult and potentially one of the most rewarding chapters of Hamilton's career. When Lewis Hamilton confirmed he was leaving Mercedes for Ferrari in 2025, it wasn't just a career move. It was a shockwave through the sport. Fans imagined the iconic red suit, the prancing horse on his chest, and the possibility of bringing a championship back to Maranello after over 15 years. But behind the scenes, Vasseur, the man responsible for making this partnership work, is sounding a note of caution, and it's worth listening to. Fred Vasseur knows the road ahead won't be smooth. In a recent interview, he admitted something unexpected. Hamilton and Ferrari might have underestimated the challenge of joining forces. And that's a big statement when you're talking about a 7-time world champion and one of the most legendary teams in motorsport history. Why? Because this isn't just about a driver switching teams. It's about stepping into a completely different culture, a different car philosophy, and a different pressure cooker. At Mercedes, Hamilton has spent over a decade in a hyper-efficient, methodically German environment. Everything is precision engineered, calculated, and familiar. Ferrari? It's more emotive, more intense, more political, and more scrutinized than any other team in F1. Vasseur pointed out that adapting to this kind of environment takes time, and it's something even the greatest drivers can't shortcut. We've seen it before. Sebastian Vettel's move to Ferrari in 2015 came with massive expectations, but the weight of history and internal politics made that journey far from easy. Let's talk about the car itself. Ferrari's current machine is fast, but inconsistent. One weekend, they're challenging Red Bull. The next, they're struggling to manage tire degradation. Hamilton will have to adapt to a completely new driving style to get the most out of it. Vasseur hinted that while Hamilton's talent is undeniable, there's a learning curve ahead, one that neither side can ignore. So why did Hamilton take this risk? It's partly about legacy. Winning a title with Ferrari is the kind of achievement that cements your place in the history books forever. Think Michael Schumacher, think Niki Lauda. Hamilton knows that if he can pull this off, it will be one of the defining stories in all of sport. But legacy comes with pressure. And in Ferrari's case, that pressure is relentless. Every move, every race, every word spoken to the media will be magnified. Here's where the psychology kicks in. Humans tend to underestimate how long it takes to adapt to a new environment. It's called the planning fallacy. You think you'll settle in quickly, that your skills will instantly transfer, but reality almost always takes longer. Vasseur is essentially warning Hamilton and Ferrari not to fall into that trap. It's not just Hamilton who needs to adapt. Ferrari does too. Vasseur stressed that the team must integrate Hamilton in the right way, building trust and understanding before the results can follow. That means making sure the engineers, strategists, and even the culture at Maranello are ready to mesh with the way Hamilton works. Here's the twist. By the time Hamilton steps into the Ferrari cockpit in 2025, Formula One will be on the verge of huge regulation changes coming in 2026. That means the team won't just be focused on winning right away. They'll also be developing an entirely new car for the future. Balancing short-term performance with long-term planning? That's a high-wire act. History tells us that even the greatest champions can stumble when they change teams. Fernando Alonso at McLaren, Vettel at Ferrari. Even Schumacher's first season with the Scuderia wasn't dominant. The pattern is clear. Success takes time, patience, and an ability to weather the storms of transition. But here's the exciting part. If anyone can do it, it's Lewis Hamilton. His resilience, his mental toughness, and his relentless pursuit of excellence are exactly what Ferrari needs. Vasseur himself believes that once the adaptation phase is over, the potential is sky high. Still, Ferrari fans are famously impatient. They've been waiting since 2007 for a driver's championship. The arrival of Hamilton will set expectations through the roof, and managing those expectations might be one of Vasseur's toughest jobs. So, what should we realistically expect in Hamilton's first season? Podiums? Almost certainly. Race wins? Possible. A championship? That depends on how quickly Hamilton and Ferrari can sync, and how strong Red Bull remains. For Hamilton, this is going to require something rare: embracing vulnerability. Accepting that there will be mistakes, setbacks, and moments of frustration. For Ferrari, it means trusting a driver who has been shaped by a completely different racing philosophy and giving him the tools and freedom to make it work. Fred Vasseur's warning isn't doom and gloom, it's realism. He's reminding everyone that championships aren't won on paper, and that even legends have to earn their stripes all over again when they switch teams. One thing's for sure, the Hamilton-Ferrari story is going to be one of the most fascinating sagas in F1 history. Will it end with heartbreak, or with the kind of triumph that cements a legacy forever? Only time will tell, and we'll be here to cover every twist and turn along the way. Have you ever wondered what it really takes to survive in the cutthroat world of Formula One? One mistake, one bad race, one whisper in the paddock, and your entire career could be hanging by a thread. Today, we're diving into a story that's got the F1 community talking. A story involving Red Bull, one of the most successful teams in modern history, their longtime boss Christian Horner, and a driver who isn't afraid to speak his mind, Dan Ticktum. But here's the twist. Ticktum doesn't believe for a second that the latest rumors about Horner's future are true, and the way he explains it might just make you question everything you've been hearing. Let's set the scene. Christian Horner, the man who's been leading Red Bull Racing since they entered Formula One back in 2005. Under his leadership, the team has gone from underdogs to absolute dominators, winning multiple Constructors' One-Vander championships and helping drivers like Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen become world champions. But in recent weeks, there have been reports, some of them pretty sensational, suggesting that Horner could be on the chopping block. The reason? Allegations and internal tensions that, according to some media outlets, could lead to his removal as team principal. Now, in the world of F1, rumors are like wildfire. They spread fast, they get hotter with every retelling, and sometimes they're not even based on reality. This is where Dan Ticktum steps in. If you know Ticktum, you know he's never been shy about speaking his mind. The former Red Bull Junior driver has had his fair share of controversies, but he's also been brutally honest when it comes to the politics of motorsport. And when he heard the latest talk about Horner, his reaction was simple: I don't believe it. Why? Well, according to Ticktum, the idea that Red Bull would sack Christian Horner over what's been reported just doesn't add up. He believes the rumors have been blown out of proportion and that the people pushing them are either misinformed or have their own agendas. In his view, Horner's track record speaks for itself. Under Horner's leadership, Red Bull has achieved a level of dominance in the modern hybrid era that only Mercedes can rival. Getting rid of him would be, in Ticktum's words, a massive own goal. But let's pause here and think about this from a psychological perspective. Why do stories like this gain so much traction in the first place? It's because as humans, we're drawn to conflict. Our brains are wired to pay attention to drama, to power struggles, to the possibility of big changes in familiar systems. When we hear that the head of a hugely successful F1 team might be on the way out, it activates our curiosity and our desire to know the inside scoop. And the media knows this, which is why stories like this often get more coverage than, say, the quiet success of a technical upgrade or a flawless pit stop strategy. Ticktum, however, isn't buying it. And here's where his personal experience comes into play. He knows what it's like to be part of the Red Bull system. He knows the culture, the expectations, and the internal politics. And while he admits that Horner is a polarizing figure, someone who's made enemies as well as allies, he believes that Red Bull's leadership is far too pragmatic to throw away a winning formula without an extremely good reason. And from what he's seen, that reason just isn't there. Of course, Ticktum's stance also taps into something else, the idea of loyalty in F1. Despite all the competition and backroom deals, teams do sometimes stick by their leaders when the results are undeniable. And if there's one thing Horner has provided in abundance, it's results. Multiple world titles, a car that's currently the class of the field, a team that's functioning like a well-oiled machine. Throwing all that away because of a few headlines? Ticktum says it's not just unlikely, it's almost unthinkable. But here's where it gets interesting. While Ticktum's comments are direct, they also reveal the deep divide between public perception and insider reality. For the fans reading these rumors online, the possibility of Horner's downfall might seem thrilling or even inevitable. But for someone who's been inside that world, the idea feels like fantasy. And that gap between perception and reality is one of the most fascinating parts of modern sports coverage. The stories we think we know are often very different from what's actually happening behind closed doors. Now, whether you agree with Ticktum or not, there's no denying that his comments have added another layer to this ongoing saga. They challenge us to think critically about the information we consume. To ask ourselves, who benefits from this story being told? What's the source? And could it be that sometimes the most sensational headlines are the ones that deserve the most skepticism? And that's not just true in F1. It's true in life. We're constantly bombarded with stories designed to grab our attention, trigger our emotions, and keep us hooked. The trick, and this is something Ticktum is reminding us of, is to pause and question before we believe. So where does this leave us? Well, as of now, Christian Horner is still very much in charge at Red Bull Racing. The team continues to perform at the highest level, and the rumors, while persistent, remain just that, rumors. Ticktum's words might not make the headlines as loudly as the initial reports did, but they serve as a reminder that in the high-pressure, high-stakes world of Formula One, not everything is as it seems. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. In a sport where split-second decisions can make or break a race, where engineering brilliance and human skill combine to create something extraordinary, it's easy to forget that the biggest battles aren't always fought on the track. Sometimes they're fought in the media, in the court of public opinion, and in the minds of the fans. So the next time you see a headline about a major shakeup in F1, remember Dan Ticktum's words. Consider the source. Look at the bigger picture. And never underestimate the power of a story to shape the way we see the world. Because in the end, Formula One isn't just about speed, it's about strategy, on the track and off it. Imagine this, you're Zak Brown, the CEO of McLaren. You fought tooth and nail to bring your team back to the front, and then out of nowhere, you admit that your weakest rival is actually really, really good. Wait, what? Today, we're diving deep into Zak Brown's surprising comments, the psychology behind them, and what they mean for the 2025 Formula One season. Because in F1, nothing is ever as simple as it sounds. Let's rewind for a second. McLaren has been on a resurgence. Lando Norris, consistent, fast, hungry for his first win. Oscar Piastri, the rookie sensation who showed zero fear going wheel to wheel with the very best. And the MCL38. A car that went from midfield mediocrity to podium contender in record time. You'd think McLaren's focus would be on beating the likes of Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. But when Zak Brown was asked about their weakest rival, his answer took everyone by surprise. He pointed the finger at Aston Martin. Yes, Aston Martin. The same Aston Martin that shocked the world in 2023 with Fernando Alonso's podium streak, but then slipped backwards as the season wore on. The same team many thought had lost their edge. And yet Zak Brown says, they're really good. Here's where it gets interesting. In sports psychology, there's a tactic called positive projection. When you publicly praise a rival, especially one the public has started to underestimate, you plant a seed in everyone's mind. Watch out for them. It's a double move. First, it takes pressure off your own team. Now people think McLaren's being realistic. Second, it subtly forces your rival to carry the weight of expectation. Zak Brown didn't just say Aston Martin was good. He went on to explain that their technical upgrades, their driver lineup, and their relentless investment make them a serious threat, even if the points table doesn't show it yet. And he's not wrong. Fernando Alonso may be in his 40s, but he's driving like a man half his age, aggressive, precise, and mentally bulletproof. Lance Stroll, not always consistent, but on his day, he can deliver big points, and in a tight midfield, that's gold. But why call them the weakest rival? Here's the psychological hook. It's a relative term. McLaren's weakest rival doesn't mean they're weak. It means, of the big names McLaren fights with, Aston Martin is statistically the lowest threat. By framing it this way, Zak makes McLaren look both humble and focused. They're acknowledging the challenge, but also quietly signaling, we've got the upper hand here, for now. Think about the F1 battlefield right now. Red Bull is in a league of their own. Ferrari has flashes of brilliance but keeps tripping over strategy calls. Mercedes is still trying to find a magic formula post-Hamilton dominance. And in that mix, McLaren has emerged as a consistent podium contender. Aston Martin, they're the wild card, and wild cards can be dangerous. From a fan's perspective, Zak's comments do two things. One, they stir curiosity. We start asking, is Aston Martin cooking up something we don't know about? Two, they set up an underdog versus underdog rivalry, something that's always electric to watch. In fact, this little psychological nudge might just fuel Aston Martin's fire. In competitive sports, players and teams often latch onto any perceived slight, or in this case, any backhanded compliment, as motivation. And here's the kicker. We've seen this before. In 2023, Christian Horner downplayed Mercedes' pace early in the season, only for Mercedes to show up with upgrades that spooked Red Bull enough to push their own development harder. In 2018, Ferrari claimed Red Bull was not a real title contender. Guess who snatched wins in the second half of the season? Yep, Red Bull. Sometimes these public statements are less about truth and more about mind games. So was Zak Brown playing mind games? Possibly. But there's another layer here, sponsorship and branding. McLaren's image is built on being a fighter, the plucky challenger, the team that claws its way back to glory. By singling out Aston Martin as a dangerous underdog, Zak reinforces McLaren's own story. They respect the fight, they thrive in it, and they're ready for anyone. Here's where you, the fan, should keep your eyes. Testing data, the lap times, the upgrade packages, the long-run pace. That's where we'll see if Aston Martin is a sleeping giant. If they close the gap early in the season, Zak Brown's comments will look like foresight. If they struggle, it'll look like he was being diplomatic while quietly focusing on bigger fish. The next few races will tell us a lot. Will McLaren keep their upward curve? Will Aston Martin pull off another early season shock? Or will both teams find themselves in an all-year duel for best of the rest? One thing's for sure, in Formula One, rivalries aren't just fought on the track. They're fought in press conferences, in interviews, and in the subtle art of psychological warfare. So the next time you hear a team boss call a rival really good, ask yourself, is it respect or is it a chess move? Because in F1, every word counts. Imagine being behind the wheel of a Formula One car that feels nothing like the ones you've ever driven, where every input triggers a new sensation. That's exactly what Aston Martin's newest development driver, Jack Crawford, just revealed. And it's about their highly anticipated 2026 F1 contender, crafted by none other than Adrian Newey. First, the stage. Formula One is undergoing its most dramatic overhaul in years. 50% electrification, active aerodynamics, sustainable fuels, brand new power units. It's a blank canvas for teams willing to think differently. And Aston Martin? They've thrown everything at it. A new Honda partnership, a state-of-the-art wind tunnel, and the greatest designer in F1 history, Adrian Newey. They've secured a full works engine deal with Honda starting 2026, ensuring custom integration between chassis and power unit. No more customer compromises. Plus, their new wind tunnel, in collaboration with ARM AI, crunches data in real time from thousands of sensors, giving Aston an aerodynamic edge under tight FEA restrictions. And Adrian Newey, the genius behind multiple championship-winning cars, Aston's managing technical partner and minority owner, here to design the AMR 26. Now, think of Jack Crawford, a young Formula 2 driver, working behind the scenes. He's not just testing improvements to the current AMR 25. Crawford's been experimenting with the 2026 spec car in the simulator and says it feels a bit different from today's ground effect machines. He's helping break in both chassis and the brand new Honda power unit, something he says has been fascinating. It's his first time aiding in power unit development, and he may never have gone through this level of rule change as a driver. It's new territory. That sense of being part of something entirely new taps into our human curiosity. It's why you're watching right now. Newey is already deep into the fundamentals of the AMR 26, the suspension geometry, fuel tank size, wheelbase. Why these parts? Because once set, they're locked for the season. Everything else, front and rear wings, bodywork, it's flexible for in-season updates. And get this, Newey thinks the 2026 rules allow more innovation than he originally feared, echoing his positive outlook back during the 2022 reset. When someone of Newey's caliber says there's more room for creativity, you know there's serious potential there. But it's not all smooth sailing. Newey has admitted that Aston's simulation tools, especially the driver in loop simulator, are weak. He says it could take up to 2 years to overhaul them fully. Think of it like having a Ferrari engine but driving in a blurred mirror. It takes precision to win, and the tool to achieve that precision still needs work. Combine Newey's expertise, Honda's backing, ARM's data-powered wind tunnel, all underpinned by Crawford's fresh insights, and you've got a recipe for disruption. Remember, Newey has turned rule changes into championships before. Damon Hill even hinted that Newey might have already spotted a loophole in the 2026 regulations that others haven't. That single sentence, "he's found something," primes us with anticipation. We want to know what that something is. There's also a human story here. Lance Stroll, facing teammates like Alonso, has been sympathized with, even dubbed the poor guy wrestling with racing legends every weekend. Newey's arrival, plus a rising culture of confidence, is just what Aston Martin needs. He's not there to build morale, he's there to instill a winning mentality. So, does Aston Martin become a title contender in 2026? Racing contracts or even grid shakeups won't matter if the car can't perform. Newey has said attracting big names like Verstappen without a fast car is a pipe dream. Performance is the only ticket. But with Crawford's cockpit insights, that cutting-edge wind tunnel, and Newey's record with regulation shifts, it's not just a dream. It might just be the blueprint. Here's where we land. A fresh technical landscape, an F1 legend at the drawing board, next-gen hybrid power, a rising star driver offering real-time feel. Aston Martin is on a trajectory to go from underdog to disruptor. What will happen next? Will Newey unlock a game-changing loophole? Can Crawford's feedback push the AMR 26 over the edge? And most important, is Aston Martin about to become the team to beat? Drop your predictions in the comments, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because in F1, the next rule change can rewrite the entire map. Verstappen is threatening to leave Red Bull after engine performance leak. Mercedes is scraping its upgrades after a serious issue, and McLaren is preparing for Oscar versus Lando drama. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Imagine a superstar at the heart of a global F1 empire. Now picture that empire wobbling. What happens when the driver who's become synonymous with a team's identity, Max Verstappen, faces whispers of exit? The rumors were rife. Today, Red Bull's new boss has spoken, revealing what the team really thinks about losing its cornerstone. Stay tuned, because this could reshape the F1 landscape as we know it. I'm Your Name, and in today's video, we're diving deep into the rumor mill and the truth behind Max Verstappen's rumored exit from Red Bull. We'll crack open the psychology of high-stakes loyalty, the wooden framework of contracts, and how the whispers of a superstar's departure can ignite a team to act or fall apart. Hit subscribe and ring that bell. Every second counts. Red Bull Racing, once a fortress of dominance, is facing one of its toughest seasons yet. Their car has struggled with balance and grip, problems Verstappen has helped paper over with sheer talent and experience. But cracks are showing, and speculators have been quick to throw his name around, especially with Mercedes reportedly eyeing a move and exit clauses potentially ready to trigger. Laurent Mekies, Red Bull's new team principal, stepped into the limelight this weekend and made one thing perfectly clear. Verstappen isn't just another driver. He's central to the team's identity and its bid for resurgence. That's not lip service. That's survival psychology. When your team's identity is stamped with a name, losing it would fracture the brand. Here's where it gets fascinating. Loyalty in elite sport isn't just emotional, it's strategic. Verstappen's experience isn't a luxury, it's a compass when the team is lost in a development tunnel. Mekies emphasizes that Max knows when the car's been working and when it's not, making him essential to turning the ship around. From a cognitive perspective, this aligns with the loss aversion principle. Teams fear losing proven value more than they value new gains. Red Bull isn't just saying they don't want him to leave. They're signaling they'd collapse without him because they know he's the psychological anchor through chaos. Despite the noise, Verstappen's contract runs until 2028. But the F1 rumor engine churns. Is there a clause that triggers if he slips out of the top 4 or even the top 2 in the standings? Some sources say yes, but conflicting reports cloud the picture. Here's the thing. Contracts in F1 are more than signatures. They're locked away behind the FIA's Contract Recognition Board, which polices duplicates and disputes. Verstappen cannot just walk away, even if he wanted to, without Red Bull's explicit agreement or paying a massive buyout that could run into hundreds of millions. In short, yes, the rumors have legs, but the legal bones beneath them are ironclad. This is a high-stakes chess game, and Red Bull holds most of the pieces. If Verstappen stays, and it looks like he will, Red Bull buys itself time to fix the car and rebuild momentum without losing its psychological anchor. But if he were to leave, it would be seismic. Every team in the paddock, from Mercedes to Aston Martin, would feel the shockwaves. What's clear is that Red Bull is feeling the threat, and not just from the car's performance. Mekies' words were purposeful. He wasn't just dousing rumors. He was protecting a brand that has become inseparable from its driver. In psychological terms, that's identity fusion, where a person's identity and an organization's identity become one. So what's our takeaway? Verstappen's at a crossroads, and so is Red Bull. The rumors may swirl, but the contract and the psychology leans firmly towards stability for now. Will that stability translate to results on track? Only time, and Verstappen's loyalty will tell. Imagine being the most successful driver in your sport and still feeling the system is holding you back. What would you change? Today, Lewis Hamilton lays out an audacious vision for the future of Formula One contracts, pushing not just for speed on the track, but fairness off it. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, a Ferrari driver in 2025, and yet, despite his legendary status, he believes the system itself needs an overhaul. It's a powerful shift, not focusing on legacy or lap times, but asking, how can I make this sport better for everyone? In a candid interview with Belgium's RTBF during the Belgian Grand Prix, Hamilton revealed his changed perspective. He says legacy isn't front of mind anymore. There have been so many great drivers, it matters less to me today, he admitted. Instead, he's laser-focused on what he can contribute, concretely. That's a psychological pivot, from ego to empathy. A clever way to humanize one of sport's biggest names and draw the audience in emotionally. Hamilton's wish list? It's revolutionary. First, he points to the restrictive nature of current F1 contracts. Drivers often can't even talk to other teams. That kind of lock-in feels archaic in a sport that's grown from revenues of £700 million to beyond $3 billion, while salaries and crew compensation have not kept pace. Next, Hamilton underscores diversity, or the lack thereof. He calls for more opportunities and better access within the paddock. And he doesn't stop there. Hamilton addresses sustainability. Every race weekend leaves behind wasted food, packaging, and resources. He imagines systems to upcycle, recycle, and even donate excess to food banks. It's not about perfection, just progress. "You can tell me to shut up and drive, but that's not me," Hamilton said. That line centers the tension between silence and speaking up. And Hamilton isn't just talking, he's walking it. He reminds us he has access. He can meet prime ministers or presidents, and he intends to use that access for positive change. That contrast between racing and advocacy makes for gripping viewing. Here's the emotional core. Hamilton, a racing legend, acknowledges his privilege and sees a bigger mission. He speaks not as a champion hungry for more accolades, but as a steward who wants the sport to better reflect its values. That's a powerful, aspirational message. Why should the audience care? Because this isn't just about racing. It's about fairness, representation, sustainability, and courage. It invites people to not only love F1 for the speed, but to believe in its potential to do more. Hamilton's voice becomes a catalyst. So, what's next? Will F1 evolve? Will other drivers and teams follow Hamilton's lead? That's where the suspense lies, and where this conversation begins. Do you want Hamilton to reinvent driver contracts? Should food waste at races become a social cause? Let me know in the comments. Imagine this. McLaren has just clinched the Constructors' Championship. The crowd is roaring, the champagne is spraying, and suddenly the friendly smiles between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris start to fade. What happens next could define the future of both their careers. Jacques Villeneuve believes this moment will reveal their true characters, and it might not be pretty. But why? And what does he know that the rest of us don't? Let's break it down. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris have, until now, looked like one of Formula One's most harmonious teammate pairings. Both young, both incredibly talented, both willing to praise each other in interviews. McLaren's 2024 resurgence has only amplified that dynamic, turning them into a dream duo for fans and a nightmare for rivals. But here's the thing. F1 history shows that when two talented drivers are competing in the same car, harmony doesn't always last. Villeneuve has seen it before, and according to him, the moment McLaren reaches the very top is when the masks will drop, and the nice guy act will be tested. Sports psychologists call it the scarcity mindset. When resources are limited, in this case, wins, podiums, and championship glory, people instinctively become more protective and competitive. Right now, both drivers are hungry, but there's still room for cooperation because McLaren is chasing others. Once McLaren is the one being chased, the spotlight gets hotter, the stakes get higher, and suddenly your biggest rival is the person sharing your garage. Jacques Villeneuve, a man who's been there himself, predicts this exact scenario. In his words, once they start fighting for wins every weekend, that's when we'll see who they really are. He's not being cynical, he's being realistic. Remember the infamous Rosberg versus Hamilton battles at Mercedes? Or Senna versus Prost at McLaren in the late 80s? All those started with mutual respect, until winning meant beating the guy sitting across from you in the debrief room. For Oscar Piastri, the stakes are massive. He's still early in his career and building a reputation as calm and composed. But winning changes people. The psychology of victory, especially in F1, can shift priorities. Villeneuve suggests that this will be the real test of Piastri's maturity. Will he stay cool under pressure, or will ambition push him into conflict? And remember, he's up against a driver who's already established himself as McLaren's golden boy. For Lando Norris, the dynamic is different. He's been McLaren's star for years. The team has been built around him. But if Piastri starts matching or even beating him in a championship fight, Norris will feel that shift. This is where another psychological principle comes in: status threat. Humans are wired to defend their social standing, especially in competitive environments. If Norris feels his #1 status slipping, we could see a very different side to him. Villeneuve's prediction isn't about if, it's about when. And if McLaren really is on track to fight for championships, the when could be as soon as next season. Imagine it. Two equally talented drivers, equal machinery, and a title on the line. Every qualifying session becomes a duel. Every pit stop strategy becomes a chess match. Every tiny team order becomes a potential controversy. Formula One has shown us again and again, when your main rival is your teammate, it gets personal. Lewis Hamilton versus Nico Rosberg, childhood friends turned bitter rivals. Fernando Alonso versus Lewis Hamilton in 2007, a rookie versus champion clash that tore McLaren apart internally. Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost, legendary teammates who pushed each other to greatness and to the brink. The pattern is clear. Intra-team battles are often more explosive than any fight with a rival team. And let's not forget, we, the fans, will fuel this fire. Social media debates, fan polls, driver popularity contests. Every time one of them outperforms the other, the narrative will spread like wildfire. That creates another psychological pressure point: public perception. Drivers know when the tide of fan opinion is shifting, and it can make every track battle feel even more personal. Of course, this doesn't mean Norris and Piastri are destined to implode. Some driver pairings manage to stay civil even at the top. Think of Bottas supporting Hamilton at Mercedes, or Ricciardo and Verstappen having a mostly friendly rivalry at Red Bull, until, well, you know. If McLaren can manage expectations, give each driver equal opportunities, and keep communication open, they might avoid the worst-case scenario. But Villeneuve clearly believes the danger is real. Here's what's fascinating. The real fight might not even be on track. It could be in the politics of the team. Who gets the latest car upgrades first? Whose side do the engineers naturally favor? Whose strategy calls are prioritized? In Formula One, those small advantages can make all the difference, and drivers know it. That's why the Constructors' Championship moment Villeneuve talks about is so important. It's not just about celebrating the win. It's about the internal shift that happens right after. If you're a McLaren fan, this should be both exciting and a little nerve-wracking. We could be witnessing the start of one of the great modern rivalries in Formula One. Villeneuve's prediction gives us a lens to watch the story unfold. Every interaction between Norris and Piastri will take on new meaning. Was that smile genuine? Was that radio message really as harmless as it sounded? Or is the tension already building beneath the surface? Right now, Norris and Piastri are all smiles and mutual respect, but Villeneuve's warning reminds us that Formula One is the ultimate pressure cooker. And when the heat gets high enough, even the strongest bonds can crack. So, when McLaren finally reaches the top, and that day might be closer than anyone thinks, remember this moment. Remember Villeneuve's words, because that's when we'll truly see what these two drivers are made of. What do you think? Will Norris and Piastri stay friends if McLaren is winning? Or will we see a modern-day Hamilton versus Rosberg all over again? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the psychology behind F1 rivalries, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, the story's just getting started. Mercedes is facing one of its toughest challenges in recent years. But what if this struggle is exactly what they need to come back stronger than ever? Today, we're diving deep into how a bold decision on their rear suspension almost backfired, and why retracing their steps might just be the key to unlocking their next championship-winning car. Imagine this. You're leading the pack, feeling unstoppable. Then, out of nowhere, your own car starts working against you. That's the roller coaster Mercedes has been on this season. But here's the twist. Instead of giving up, they're learning. They're adapting. And that could change the entire game for 2026. The 2025 season started with a bang for Mercedes. George Russell scored his first victory in Canada, while his teammate Kimi Antonelli secured a solid podium finish. The W16 was looking like a real contender. But then, things took a turn. Between races like Imola and Hungary, Mercedes' performance began to wobble. Drivers reported the car felt unstable, especially when entering corners. Russell even described it as feeling like a forklift truck, bulky and hard to handle, far from the precise machine they needed. So what went wrong? The answer lies in the new rear suspension Mercedes introduced this year. It was designed to boost performance, but instead it brought unpredictability. The car became harder to control, costing them valuable speed and confidence. Bradley Lord, a key member of the Mercedes team, explained that their season was basically split in two. One half where the car was solid and competitive, and another where the new suspension caused unexpected problems. The key word here is unintended consequences, a reminder that in F1, even the smallest changes can have massive ripple effects. Faced with these challenges, Mercedes made a bold choice. Rather than pushing forward with the new setup, they decided to backtrack. At the Hungarian Grand Prix, they reverted to an older, more reliable suspension design, and the results were immediate. George Russell fought his way to the podium, Mercedes' best finish since their early season success in Canada. This wasn't just about fixing technical issues, it was about restoring the team's belief in their car and their strategy. Mercedes isn't simply trying to patch up a problem, they're recalibrating their entire approach. By stepping back and learning from their mistakes, they're building a stronger foundation for the critical 2026 season ahead. As Lord put it, retracing their steps gives the team a measure of belief. It's a powerful mindset. Success isn't about never failing, it's about understanding your failures and using them to get better. Looking ahead, the stakes couldn't be higher. The 2026 regulation changes are set to shake up the entire sport. Mercedes knows this season's lessons could be the catalyst for designing their next championship-winning car. Will this strategic backtrack be the turning point that brings Mercedes back to the front of the grid? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear, they're not giving up without a fight. If you want to stay ahead of all the F1 technical insights and team strategies, make sure you hit subscribe and ring the bell. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. Remember, in Formula One, it's never just about speed. It's about the smartest strategy, the toughest resilience, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. Verstappen sends final warning to Red Bull. Lewis receives bad news from Ferrari, and Tsunoda receives new target from Red Bull. Let's get into the latest F1 news. What if I told you Ferrari's 2025 Formula One season could be in serious danger? Not because of their drivers, not because of strategy blunders, but because of this car, the SF24. And what's worse, it's not just about performance. This is about whether Ferrari's car is even legal. In this video, we're diving deep into the investigation surrounding Ferrari's SF24, what Fred Vasseur just revealed, and how this could completely shake up the championship. But first, let's rewind. Earlier this season, Ferrari launched the SF24 with bold hopes, a completely revised aerodynamic philosophy, updated side pods, and new suspension geometry. They were clearly gunning for Red Bull, and for a moment, it worked. Ferrari was closing the gap. Leclerc was delivering consistent podiums. Sainz even snatched a win in Australia. But then, whispers started swirling in the paddock. Some teams were raising eyebrows. The SF24's floor, specifically its flexibility, was under question. And that's when the FIA quietly launched an investigation. Let that sink in. One of the most iconic teams in F1 history, being investigated for potentially breaking the rules. So what exactly are they being accused of? Let's break it down. Formula One cars must follow extremely strict rules about aerodynamics. The floor of the car, especially around the edges, must not flex beyond certain limits, because a flexible floor can mean extra downforce without officially breaking ride height rules. It's a clever trick, and one that's been banned ever since the infamous flexi floor controversy years ago. Now here's where it gets interesting. The SF24's floor design showed subtle but suspicious signs of movement during high-speed corners. Onboard footage, trackside analysis, telemetry discrepancies. Other teams noticed it too, and suddenly the FIA wanted answers. But here's the twist. Fred Vasseur, Ferrari's team principal, just made a bold public statement. He claims the SF24 is 100% legal, that all components have passed scrutineering, and that there's nothing to investigate. His exact words, "We have full confidence in the legality of our car. There's no reason to believe otherwise." But here's where psychology comes into play. When someone says there's no reason to believe otherwise, our brains automatically ask, wait, what would the reason be? This opens a curiosity loop. It plants doubt. Even if Ferrari is innocent, the damage is already being done, mentally and politically. Because in F1, perception is reality. So what happens now? Well, the FIA has not officially charged Ferrari with anything, but their inspectors have been seen spending more time around the SF24's garage. More floor samples, more detailed scrutineering after races, more attention than usual. And that in itself is telling, because here's how it usually plays out. First, the FIA observes an anomaly. Then they quietly monitor the part over multiple races. If suspicion grows, they issue a technical directive, a rule clarification, that may ban a specific design. Finally, if the team still uses it, penalties can follow. We've seen this pattern before. Remember Mercedes in 2020 with DAS or Red Bull's controversial brake ducts? History doesn't lie. But let's talk about the real danger for Ferrari here. Even if their floor is technically legal right now, a new technical directive could force them to change it mid-season. And that's a nightmare. Why? Because a Formula One car is a delicately balanced machine. If you suddenly have to redesign a core component like the floor, everything changes. Downforce, tire wear, cornering speed, even driver confidence. It's like changing the foundation of a skyscraper halfway through construction. This could explain why Ferrari's recent performances have dipped slightly. Are they already adapting under pressure? Here's another psychological tactic teams use: preemptive denial. By coming out publicly and saying there's no problem, Ferrari might be trying to control the narrative before it spirals. Because in F1, headlines matter. If a team is seen as bending the rules, sponsors get nervous. Rival teams protest more. And fans, well, fans remember. Just ask Red Bull. They're still hearing about 2021. Now, let's not forget the bigger picture. This isn't just about Ferrari. This is about what kind of sport Formula One wants to be. If the FIA cracks down too hard, innovation dies. If they're too soft, teams push boundaries until someone gets caught. It's a constant balancing act between creativity and compliance. Ferrari might be in the gray zone. They might be pioneers, or they might be pushing too far. Time will tell. So what can we expect in the coming weeks? Here's what you should keep your eyes on. Watch for new technical directives, especially anything targeting floor design. Pay attention to Ferrari's pace. A sudden drop could mean they've been forced to change something. Listen closely to what rival teams are saying. If McLaren, Mercedes, or Red Bull start making noise, the pressure will increase. And finally, follow Fred Vasseurs' language. If he starts being less confident in his public statements, that's a red flag. Let's wrap this up with one final question. Is the SF24 actually illegal? Right now, the answer is not officially. But in Formula One, legality is often just one meeting away from becoming controversy. And for Ferrari, a team that hasn't won a championship since 2008, any disruption could derail everything they've built this year. So buckle up, because whether it's cleared or banned, the truth about the SF24 could change the entire trajectory of the 2025 season. And trust me, this story is far from over. Why hasn't Mercedes confirmed its 2026 Formula One driver lineup yet? That's the question echoing through the paddock. Everyone expected an announcement by now. George Russell is the obvious lead driver, and 17-year-old Kimi Antonelli, the Italian prodigy backed by Mercedes for years, he's being groomed for greatness. So, what's the holdup? Well, the truth is more complex than you'd think, and what Mercedes is doing right now tells us a lot about the future of Formula One and about how top teams really operate behind the scenes. Let's unpack it. First, let's talk about George Russell. He's been with Mercedes since 2022, and honestly, he's done everything the team could have asked for. He's quick, articulate, works well with engineers, and importantly, he plays the long game. In a world where consistency and character matter as much as raw pace, Russell is the guy you build around. So why hasn't Mercedes just announced him as their 2026 driver? Because Formula One isn't just about talent, it's about timing, politics, and positioning. By not rushing the announcement, Mercedes is keeping its strategic cards close to its chest. They're watching how the 2025 season unfolds. They're leaving the door open to flexibility, and they're giving themselves room to adjust to the massive regulation changes coming in 2026. Remember, F1 is changing dramatically in 2026. New power unit regulations, new aero concepts, a new competitive landscape. And Mercedes, they've been burned before by locking things in too early. This time, they're playing the long game. Now, let's talk about the wild card. Kimi Antonelli. At just 17 years old, Antonelli has already built a reputation in junior categories as a generational talent. Mercedes has been backing him since he was a kid, and Toto Wolff, who rarely speaks in hyperbole, has compared him to the likes of George and even Lewis in terms of potential. But here's where psychology comes in. Mercedes doesn't want to throw a teenager into the deep end unless the timing is absolutely right. Why? Because first impressions in F1 matter a lot. Just ask Nick de Vries or Mick Schumacher. If your debut season goes wrong, it sticks. It shapes public perception, team confidence, and sponsorship potential. Mercedes knows this. So they're doing something smart. They're not rushing Antonelli into a full-time seat in 2025 just because there's hype. They're letting him develop. They're testing him privately. They're evaluating how he handles pressure, not just lap times. This is all part of a psychological strategy. They're managing expectation for him, for the team, and for the public. By delaying the announcement, Mercedes lowers the spotlight. They create an environment where Antonelli can grow without being chewed up by headlines. But here's what's really interesting. Some insiders believe Mercedes is already committed to Antonelli privately. They just haven't confirmed it publicly. Why? Because they're buying time. Time to evaluate how their 2026 car is progressing. Time to see how rival teams are positioning themselves. And yes, time to negotiate contracts in silence. Think about it. If Mercedes announces both drivers today, it removes all leverage in future conversations. With sponsors, with engineers, even with potential reserve drivers. In other words, this silence, it's power. Now, let's widen the lens. This driver delay is also about brand image. Mercedes wants to frame their next chapter carefully. After Lewis Hamilton's departure to Ferrari, the team knows fans are watching closely. They don't want to rush into a lineup that feels experimental or reactionary. They want to launch a new era, with Russell as the proven leader and Antonelli as the rising star, in a way that feels earned and deliberate, not impulsive. This delay gives them narrative control. And here's another psychological principle. Anticipation builds engagement. Every week they delay the announcement, speculation grows, headlines swirl, fan theories explode. Mercedes stays in the spotlight without saying a word. That's free marketing. Think of it like a movie trailer. You don't want to reveal the twist too early. You want people talking, guessing, engaging. Now let's pause for a second. If you're Mercedes, you know the next few years are critical. Red Bull's dominance won't last forever. Ferrari's aggressive moves, like snatching Lewis, are a threat. McLaren's driver pairing is young and hungry. So Mercedes needs to build a driver lineup that isn't just fast, it needs to be future-proof. That means chemistry, media strength, data feedback, adaptability, leadership, all of that. George and Kimi could be that duo. But Mercedes won't pull the trigger until they're sure they're putting the right personalities in the right roles at the right time. And that's why you're still waiting for the announcement. Not because they're unsure, but because they're too smart to be rushed. Let's also not forget, other teams are watching closely. Williams, Haas, Sauber. All of them are interested in Antonelli if he becomes available, even for a loan deal. So by delaying the news, Mercedes keeps control over the narrative, over the market, over the future. And maybe, just maybe, they're still testing their options. Could an outside name sneak into the conversation? Could they line up a surprise third driver to shadow Antonelli in case things go sideways? We don't know. And that's the point. Mercedes doesn't want us to know. They want the story to build, slowly, carefully, until the moment they decide to reveal everything. And when they do, it'll be on their terms. So here's what to watch for in the coming months. Is Antonelli getting more test time? Is Russell speaking more confidently about the team's future? Are Mercedes engineers hinting at 2026 car progress? All of these are clues. Clues that will tell us when Mercedes is ready to flip the script and launch its next era in Formula One. Until then, remember this, in F1, silence isn't uncertainty, it's strategy. And Mercedes, they're playing chess while others play checkers. What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton, one of the most successful drivers in Formula One history, might actually be a problem for Ferrari? I know. Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what Red Bull's Helmut Marko just suggested. And it's not just trash talk. It might reveal a deeper truth about Ferrari's future and why the 2025 season could be a ticking time bomb. Let's break it down. Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari in 2025 was supposed to be a dream pairing. the sport's biggest star, joining the sport's most iconic team. What could possibly go wrong? Well, according to Helmut Marko, a man who's never afraid to stir the pot, plenty. Marko recently called Hamilton a handicap for Ferrari. Yes, his exact word, handicap. But before you write this off as typical Red Bull drama, let's understand what he's actually saying, and whether there's any truth behind the controversy. First, some context. Helmut Marko is Red Bull's senior advisor. He's been around the sport for decades. He's blunt, unapologetic, and usually says what others are afraid to. In a recent interview, he didn't just take a shot at Hamilton. He compared him directly to Yuki Tsunoda, Red Bull's own driver at RB, and said both are underperforming as second drivers, hurting their teams in the Constructors' Championship. Think about that. He's comparing a 7-time world champion to a driver still fighting for consistency in the midfield. That's not just disrespectful, it's strategic, because behind the insult is a powerful insight about team dynamics. Marko's real point is this: in Formula One today, it's not just about having one great driver. If you want to win the Constructors' title, you need two. Look at McLaren. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are both delivering. They're pushing each other. They're scoring big every weekend. And suddenly, McLaren is a genuine threat. Compare that to Ferrari. Yes, Charles Leclerc is strong, but Carlos Sainz, he's been inconsistent. Injured, out of contract, and soon, he's being replaced by Hamilton. So the big question is, will Hamilton make things better or worse? Now, let's talk psychology. There's a concept called status disruption. When someone new enters a well-established group, especially someone with high status, it can throw off the balance. Think of a workplace. A new boss comes in, great credentials, big name, but suddenly there's tension. People don't know their place anymore. That's what could happen at Ferrari. Leclerc is the team's golden boy. He's been there for years. The team has been built around him. Now Hamilton enters the scene, a superstar with his own crew, his own methods, and enormous expectations. Will they gel or will they clash? Because make no mistake, Lewis doesn't come to play second fiddle, and Leclerc isn't about to give up his throne. It's a chemistry experiment with no guaranteed outcome. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Marko's comments weren't just about Ferrari, they were about the bigger picture, how second drivers can make or break a season. Red Bull has seen it firsthand. Max Verstappen is dominating, but because Sergio Perez has struggled, Red Bull is suddenly vulnerable in the constructors' standings. They're winning races, but McLaren is closing the gap. And Marko knows if your second driver underperforms, your team suffers, no matter how good your number one is. So he's applying the same logic to Ferrari. Even if Leclerc shines, if Hamilton underdelivers, or worse, if the two drivers fight each other instead of working together, Ferrari won't win titles. So is Marko right? Will Hamilton be a handicap? Let's be honest, Lewis isn't the driver he was in 2020. He's older. He hasn't won a race in years, and joining Ferrari, a team famous for political chaos, is no small task. But let's also not forget, this is Lewis Hamilton, 7 world titles, hundreds of podiums, the most complete driver of his generation. You don't just lose that overnight. If Ferrari can give him a fast car, and if they can manage the internal dynamics, Hamilton could be the final piece of the puzzle. But those are two massive ifs. And here's where the psychology really kicks in. In storytelling, there's a principle called tension and release. You build suspense, you raise the stakes, and then you deliver resolution. Formula One is doing exactly that. Hamilton's move is creating tension. Fans are wondering, hoping, doubting. Ferrari is under pressure. Expectations are sky high. And rivals like Red Bull and McLaren are watching it all unfold, ready to pounce if things go wrong. In 2025, that tension will finally be released, and it will either be glorious or explosive. So what should you take away from all this? Helmut Marko might have used a strong word, but his message is clear. In modern Formula One, no team can afford a weak link. Not Red Bull, not Ferrari, not anyone. And while Hamilton brings experience, talent, and global appeal, he also brings risk. A new environment, a new teammate, a new challenge, and no margin for error. Will he rise again, or will the Ferrari dream become a nightmare? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, 2025 is going to be wild. Lewis Hamilton has just dropped a bombshell. He teased a mysterious announcement set for August 8th, and speculation is running wild. Is it his retirement, a shocking team shakeup, or something entirely off the track? Today I'm unpacking what that smoke and mirrors could actually mean, and why you absolutely shouldn't count Lewis out just yet. Lewis's season at Ferrari hasn't exactly been smooth. No podiums in 14 races, a painful 12th place finish in Hungary, his worst of the year, and an emotional post-qualifying comment where he called himself absolutely useless. He even suggested Ferrari probably need to change driver. That kind of self-criticism, it spread like wildfire. But not everyone's reading it as defeat. Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur and former Mercedes chief Toto Wolff have come forward to say Hamilton's just venting. Wolff even believes Hamilton still has unfinished business in Formula One. So despite the public frustration behind the scenes, it's not as gloomy as it seems. Then came the tease. Hamilton posted a mysterious image online, a smoking matchstick with the date 0808. The caption, "Follow the smoke." One cryptic image and the internet exploded. Fans and pundits alike started guessing. Retirement? A mid-season exit? But let's be real, Hamilton retiring now? That doesn't add up. He signed a multi-year contract with Ferrari that keeps him in red until the end of 2027. That alone makes retirement highly unlikely. And with the 2026 regulation changes coming, bringing new cars, new engines, and a potential performance reset, it's hard to believe Lewis would bow out before then. So if it's not retirement, what is it? Let's consider Hamilton's other world. Off the track, he's building an empire. His Mission 44 initiative, fashion partnerships like his Dior capsule collection, business investments. He's not just a driver anymore. He's a brand, and brands make announcements. This could be a drop for his next fashion collaboration, a new foundation, or a major business venture. The timing, the visuals, the messaging, it all screams brand storytelling, not sports exit. Still, the F1 community loves drama. The idea of a shock retirement hooks people in. But the reality is less dramatic and more strategic. Lewis is frustrated, yes, but that doesn't mean he's finished. He's still showing up. He's still racing. He's still fighting. And remember this, Hamilton's always been a master of narrative. His life mantra is, "Still I rise." That's not just a tattoo, it's how he lives. When he hits a low, he bounces back harder. His own words after Hungary, "Come back stronger, the fight's not over, don't count me out." That's not retirement talk. That's the calm before the storm. So what do we make of this August 8th reveal? It's probably not what you think. It's not retirement. It's not Ferrari drama. It's likely a message from Lewis the entrepreneur, not Lewis the driver. And that's exactly why it's so interesting. The man has layers. He's not just chasing lap times. He's shaping culture, investing in education, disrupting fashion. So whatever drops on August 8th, it's going to be bold, it's going to be Lewis, and it's going to grab attention. Here's the bottom line. If you're expecting Hamilton to hang up the helmet this week, you'll be disappointed. But if you're curious about how athletes are reshaping their legacy beyond the sport, this could be something big. What do you think it is? A fashion drop? A new initiative? Or something none of us saw coming? Drop your wildest theories in the comments. If you're into F1 and want sharp takes that go deeper than race results, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. And remember, when Lewis says, "Follow the smoke," you better believe there's fire behind it. Hamilton makes a shocking admission to Ferrari. McLaren responds to Lando versus Oscar drama. And Verstappen responds to Feffier decision after Lewis incident. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Have you ever had that moment where you make a huge life decision and then immediately start to wonder if it was a mistake? Well, that's exactly the feeling Lewis Hamilton might be having right now. Let me explain. In what was one of the biggest shocks of the 2024 Formula One season, Lewis Hamilton announced he'd be leaving Mercedes, his racing home for over a decade, to join Ferrari starting in 2025. It was bold, emotional, even a little romantic. He said it was about chasing a childhood dream, about passion, about driving in red. But after this past weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix, that dream is starting to look more like a nightmare. Because while Ferrari was struggling, again, in the midfield, Hamilton pulled off something impressive. He took his underperforming Mercedes, fought through the chaos of the race, and finished P4, just behind the Red Bulls and McLarens. And meanwhile, his future boss at Ferrari, Fred Vasseur, was watching it all unfold. So what happened in Hungary, and why are people saying this might be the first sign that Hamilton made the wrong call? Let's break it down. Coming into the Hungarian GP, expectations for Ferrari were already low. The team's season has been defined by inconsistency. Some weekends, they look fast. Other weekends, they're nowhere. And this weekend, they were nowhere. Connor, Charles Leclerc had a messy race filled with mistakes and penalties. Carlos Sainz couldn't make it past Q2 in qualifying. The Ferrari strategy team, which already has a reputation for making questionable calls, seemed completely off the pace. Meanwhile, Hamilton, who's supposedly in a washed-up Mercedes, was fighting like hell in one of the best drives we've seen from him in months. Even Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur admitted it. In an interview after the race, he said, and I quote, "I was more frustrated for Lewis than for Ferrari." Wait, what? Ferrari's team boss was more upset about Hamilton's result than his own drivers? Yep, why? Because Vasseur knows. He knows Ferrari should be doing better. He knows that in just a few months, Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, is walking into that team expecting to win. And right now, Ferrari doesn't look even close to being ready for that. Here's the psychology behind what's going on. We all want to believe we're stepping into something better. When you leave a job, a relationship, or a team, it's usually because you think the next chapter will be an upgrade. Hamilton clearly thought that. And to be fair, who wouldn't want to drive for Ferrari? The legacy, the brand, the tifosi. It's the most iconic name in racing. But Ferrari right now is suffering from what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. That's the tension we feel when reality doesn't match our expectations. They've hired a superstar, arguably the GOAT of Formula One, but their car, their strategy, and their results are sending the opposite message. And it's not just a Lewis problem, it's a Ferrari culture problem. Vasseur said in his post-race comments that Ferrari's issue isn't just speed, it's execution. He said, "We had the potential to do much better. We made too many small mistakes." That phrase, small mistakes, is the most telling part, because small mistakes, when added up over 50 laps, become big failures. And Hamilton, he's not going to accept that. He's been in an environment at Mercedes where, for most of the last decade, perfection was the standard. Mistakes were rare, strategies were sharp, development was constant. At Ferrari, it still feels like they're figuring out how to put the puzzle pieces together. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Vasseur said he's not worried, not yet. He reminded reporters that Hamilton knew what he was signing up for. He said, "Lewis is fully aware of the situation. We've been honest with him. But here's the thing. Being aware of a problem isn't the same as experiencing it." From the outside, Hamilton could look at Ferrari's stats, see the inconsistency, the strategy errors, the tire degradation issues, and still think, I can fix that. But when you're actually inside the machine, when you're the one stuck in the midfield, when your radio is filled with panic, when your teammate is blowing strategy calls, that's when the reality hits. So what does this mean for 2025? Here's the twist. Despite everything I just said, this could still work. Fred Vasseur isn't dumb. He's one of the sharpest minds in the paddock. He's already restructured Ferrari's technical department. He's brought in new engineers. He's cut dead weight. He's preparing the team for a complete transformation, and Hamilton is a big part of that plan. Hamilton isn't coming in just to drive the car. He's coming in to change the standard. But that only works if Ferrari lets him. If they fight him, if they protect the old ways, if they resist the changes he brings, it will implode. But if they listen, if they give him the tools, if they allow his relentless pursuit of perfection to guide them, then 2025 could be something special. Let's not forget, Michael Schumacher didn't win the championship with Ferrari until his 5th season there. But when it finally clicked, it led to one of the most dominant eras in F1 history. Hamilton's hoping for a similar arc. The question is, will Ferrari rise to his level, or will they drag him down to theirs? Right now, after Hungary, it's looking shaky. But F1 is a long game, and in Formula One, perception can change in a single weekend. All eyes now shift to the next Grand Prix. Will Ferrari bounce back? Will Mercedes give Hamilton more reasons to reconsider? Or is this just the start of a dramatic new chapter? One where Hamilton becomes the hero Ferrari never knew it needed? We'll be watching, because this story, it's just getting started. Ever seen a world champion driver say nothing happened after nearly forcing another legend off the track? Welcome to the Hungarian Grand Prix 2025, where Max Verstappen tugged at the nerves of Lewis Hamilton and sparked not one, but two FIA investigations in one wild weekend. Stick around, because this intense showdown is full of drama, tension, and jaw-dropping turns. I'm your host, and today we're breaking down everything you need to know about the Hungarian Grand Prix fallout. From a bizarre towel toss during practice to a full-throttle pass on Hamilton and rising questions about rivalries and punishments, this race had it all. By the end of this video, you'll understand why one move kept fans talking and what it reveals about Verstappen's mindset and reputation. The drama began in second practice, when Max Verstappen pulled over near the edge of the Hungaroring, lifted both hands off the steering wheel mid-corner, and threw a towel out of the cockpit. Yes, a towel. Why? According to Max, it slipped from his lap and he didn't want it to get caught in the pedals, so he flung it off track. The FIA cited a safety regulation violation, arguing that he released something from the car during a live session. Red Bull and Verstappen were summoned to the stewards, but ultimately, no penalty was issued. They got a warning. It might seem like a small, even humorous moment, but psychologically, odd behavior sticks in people's minds. A towel flying out of a Formula One car? That image became a meme in minutes. But Max's Weird Friday was just the start. Qualifying was even worse. Verstappen and Red Bull were completely off pace, the grip was gone, the balance was unpredictable. He ended up qualifying 8th, his worst Saturday result of the season. It was a rare moment where the reigning world champion seemed beatable. He even admitted to the media that he had no idea why the car felt so wrong. The team had gone backwards. That sense of vulnerability was like blood in the water. Meanwhile, Ferrari was flying. Charles Leclerc took pole position, the team's first of the season, and suddenly the grid looked very different. Verstappen wasn't in control. He was stuck in the midfield, and when champions feel cornered, they fight harder. That brings us to lap 29 of the race. Max Verstappen is behind Lewis Hamilton. He sees an opening into turn 4 and lunges. Hamilton holds firm, but Max forces the issue. The two cars get dangerously close. Hamilton is pushed off track and takes the escape route to avoid a collision. The stewards immediately announce an investigation. Fans hold their breath. It's Verstappen versus Hamilton again, and this time, no one's pulling punches. After the race, Verstappen looked surprised by the fuss. He told reporters he was baffled by the summons. In his words, nothing happened. Hamilton, interestingly, didn't even attend the hearing. He chose to skip it. In the end, the stewards ruled that no further action was needed. Max kept his position, Hamilton stayed outside the points, and the world moved on. Or did it? Because under the surface, this clash reveals something deeper. Verstappen isn't just fast, he's ruthless when threatened. He saw an opportunity and took it, knowing that a post-race review was likely, but betting that it wouldn't change the outcome. And he was right. Meanwhile, Hamilton is in the middle of his own personal storm. Still adjusting to life at Ferrari, he called himself useless over the team radio during the race. After finishing 12th, he even said Ferrari might need a different driver. It was a raw, honest moment from a 7-time world champion. And it reminded fans that behind the helmets are real humans, battling not just machines, but emotions, pressure, and public expectation. While Verstappen and Hamilton were locked in their own drama, another story was unfolding up front. Lando Norris, calm, calculated, and fast. His one-stop strategy worked to perfection. He passed his teammate Oscar Piastri and brought home McLaren's 200th Formula One victory. It was a historic day for the team and for Norris, who now sits just 9 points behind Piastri in the Drivers' Championship. But let's zoom back out. What does all of this mean? It means that even champions crack under pressure. That Verstappen, despite his dominance, can still be rattled. That Hamilton, despite his experience, can still doubt himself. and that Formula One is as much a mental game as it is a physical one. From a towel tossed in frustration, to a risky move on an old rival, to a victory by a young star, this weekend had every ingredient of a classic. Verstappen's hunger is still there. Hamilton's fire might be dimmer, but it's not out. And the new generation is rising faster than ever. So what do you think? Did Verstappen cross the line with that move on Hamilton? Was the FIA right to let it go? And is Lewis right to question his place at Ferrari? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Imagine this. You're chasing your teammate who's just stolen a podium from you, and suddenly Lewis Hamilton appears in front of you. Not as an obstacle, but as an unexpected ally. That's exactly what happened at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and it almost changed everything. This is the story of how Lewis Hamilton unintentionally helped Oscar Piastri nearly steal back a podium from Lando Norris, and why this moment says so much about racing psychology, team politics, and raw instinct. Let's rewind. We're at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Temperatures are high, tensions higher, McLaren is flying. Both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are in the fight. They're fast, ruthless, focused, but behind the scenes, there's a chess game unfolding. And it's not just between the Red Bulls and Mercedes. It's happening within McLaren, between their two young stars. Piastri had qualified strong and started aggressively, but an undercut strategy shifted things in Norris's favor. Suddenly, Lando was ahead and Oscar was playing catch-up. That's when something unexpected happened. Lando Norris was holding third. Oscar Piastri was in fourth, about 2.3 seconds behind. Close, but not close enough. And then, there's Lewis Hamilton. He's sitting in fifth, and he's on a charge. The 7-time world champion is closing in on Piastri fast. Now here's where things get interesting. You'd expect Hamilton to pressure Piastri, maybe distract him, force a mistake, but the opposite happened. Because instead of cracking, Piastri activated. According to F1 experts, Hamilton's presence behind Oscar forced him into a zone, what psychologists call flow state. It's that heightened moment of focus where instinct takes over and reaction time shortens. Piastri wasn't defending, he was escaping. And in doing so, he drove like a man possessed. Suddenly, the gap between him and Norris wasn't 2.3 seconds, it was 1.6, then 1.4, then just 1.1 seconds. And this is where Lewis Hamilton unknowingly helped Oscar Piastri. By hunting down Oscar, Hamilton forced him to tap into everything. Tire management, braking precision, corner exit timing. And it worked. Oscar started closing the gap to Lando, fast. As F1 analyst and ex-driver Jolyon Palmer put it, it was as though Piastri needed the pressure from Hamilton to unlock more pace. He suddenly came alive. That pressure? It almost flipped the podium order. Now think about the irony here. Lewis Hamilton, a Mercedes driver trying to chase down a McLaren, and in doing so, he almost helped one McLaren beat another. It was like unintentionally giving Piastri a tow, not down a straight, but through his own potential. With just a few laps to go, the gap between Norris and Piastri dropped below a second. The McLaren pit wall knew it, the fans knew it, and Norris, he definitely knew it. But here's the twist. Piastri had burned through his tires. He'd over-delivered on pace to hold off Hamilton, and by the time he got close to Lando, there was nothing left to strike with. No DRS, no grip, just pressure. Lando held his nerve. Cool under fire, he crossed the line third, claiming a well-earned podium. And Piastri, fourth. So close, so fast, but just out of reach. Still, what he said after the race revealed something deeper. The car felt great in that middle stint. I could feel Hamilton behind me, but I was just focused on making the most of every lap. And Lando's radio? Mint. Thank you very much. Classic Norris. Let's break this down psychologically. Pressure creates clarity. Piastri needed an external threat, Hamilton, to switch off his thinking brain and turn on his racing instincts. That's when he started flying. Team battles are quietly savage. McLaren didn't need to give team orders. Both drivers knew what was at stake. One podium, two drivers, no mistakes allowed. Hamilton's presence changed the race without touching a single car. That's influence, that's legacy. This race wasn't just about points, it was about identity. For Lando Norris, it was another podium, more proof he's the team leader. For Oscar Piastri, it was a statement, I'm here, and I'm getting faster. And for Hamilton, it was a masterclass in indirect impact. Even when he doesn't win, he changes the race. Whether you're a Lando fan, a Piastri believer, or a Hamilton loyalist, this Hungarian GP gave you a masterpiece in racing psychology. Because sometimes, the biggest move in F1 is the one you didn't mean to make. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like and let me know in the comments. Do you think Piastri has what it takes to challenge Lando long-term? Or will Norris continue to dominate the McLaren garage? Lewis Hamilton's Formula One future is suddenly looking more uncertain than ever. After an explosive start to his time at Ferrari, many fans and experts alike are asking the same question. Is the seven-time world champion really ready for this new chapter? This isn't just speculation. Recently, none other than Damon Hill, the 1996 Formula One world champion, voiced his doubts. Hill warned that the challenges Hamilton faces at Ferrari could only get harder from here. And when someone with Hill's experience speaks, it demands our attention. Let's break down why Hamilton's future in F1 might be at a crossroads, and why this story is about much more than just racing. First, consider the context. Lewis Hamilton is a legend. 7 world titles, a record-equaling driver in the history books, and one of the most recognizable faces in the sport. But after years of dominance with Mercedes, Hamilton made a bold move, switching to Ferrari, a team with its own legendary status but recent struggles. The hope? That Hamilton would bring Ferrari back to the top. The reality? It's been anything but smooth. Ferrari's 2025 season started with high expectations, but the team has struggled to find consistency. Hamilton himself has faced uncharacteristic challenges, from qualifying disappointments to difficult race days. Mistakes have crept in, something rarely seen in Hamilton's prime years. Now imagine the psychological weight this puts on a driver like Hamilton. The pressure to perform at Ferrari is immense. This isn't just about winning races, it's about restoring glory to a brand that hasn't won a championship in over a decade. Every lap, every corner, every decision is scrutinized under the microscope of Ferrari fans and global F1 audiences. Damon Hill's comments highlight the growing awareness that Hamilton's journey won't get any easier. Hill suggested that Hamilton's struggles aren't just technical or team-related. They could signal a deeper challenge. Is the legendary driver battling the inevitable signs of aging in a sport that demands peak performance every second? Or is it a case of adapting to a new environment, team culture, and car that simply doesn't fit his driving style? This brings us to an interesting psychological angle: the concept of identity and adaptation in elite sports. Hamilton is known for his confidence, his ability to rise under pressure. But when faced with repeated setbacks, even the strongest mindset can waver. How does a champion cope when the winning formula suddenly slips away? Sports psychology tells us that athletes who struggle with adaptation often face a crisis of confidence. They question their abilities, which can lead to a vicious cycle of self-doubt and decreased performance. For Hamilton, who has been at the top for so long, this period could be one of the toughest in his career. Yet, it's not all doom and gloom. History shows us many athletes who faced mid-career slumps, only to come back stronger. Hamilton himself has overcome adversity before, from early career setbacks to intense public scrutiny over the years. His resilience is part of what makes his story so compelling. But this new chapter at Ferrari is different. The stakes are higher, the spotlight brighter, and with Hill's warning that the challenges will get harder, the pressure is mounting. Why does this matter to us as fans? Because Hamilton isn't just a driver. He's a symbol of excellence, determination, and evolution. Watching his journey unfold at Ferrari is like watching a masterclass in coping with change or struggling with it. Here's the key question: can Lewis Hamilton reinvent himself once again? Can he find a new rhythm, a new edge in a team desperate for a championship? Or will this be the beginning of a gradual decline? One thing is certain: the next few races will be critical. Every lap will be analyzed, every move debated. Fans will either witness a resurgence or a slow fade. But there's another layer to this story. It's not just about Hamilton or Ferrari. It's about the nature of greatness itself. Greatness in sport isn't a straight line. It's messy. It's full of highs and lows, moments of triumph and times of doubt. The greatest champions are those who learn to navigate the toughest moments, who adapt when everything seems to be against them. So, as Hamilton faces this tough period, we're reminded that even legends have their battles. What matters most is how they respond. If Hamilton manages to overcome these challenges, it will add a whole new chapter to his legacy. One defined not just by championships, but by courage and reinvention. If he struggles, it may mark the beginning of the final act of one of Formula One's greatest careers. Either way, this story has us hooked, because it's not just about speed or trophies, it's about the human spirit pushing to stay on top when everything is changing around you. So, what do you think? Will Hamilton rise to the occasion at Ferrari? Or will the pressure prove too much? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your predictions. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more F1 updates and deep dives. This season promises to be one of the most dramatic in recent memory, and I'll be here to bring you all the insights. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Lewis gets blasted for his recent comments. Verstappen has given up on Red Bull, and Leclerc makes a clear admission to Ferrari. Let's get into the latest F1 news. You ever hear something from a world champion that makes you stop and say, wait, what? Well, Max Verstappen just did that. The three-time Formula One world champion dropped a comment that no one saw coming. And it wasn't just surprising, it was demotivating. According to former strategist Bernie Collins, Verstappen's words could shake Red Bull to its core. So what exactly did Max say? And why are some people inside the paddock calling it a sign that Red Bull might be in serious trouble? Let's break it down. During the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend, Verstappen made a statement that has left fans and insiders scratching their heads. He said, and I quote, "We won't win another race this season." That's not a mid-pack driver talking. That's not a rookie struggling to find grip. That's Max Verstappen, the guy who dominated the 2023 season with nearly untouchable consistency. And now he's saying Red Bull won't win another race? It wasn't a passing joke. It wasn't sarcasm. It was caught on team radio in the heat of the race weekend after struggling in practice and qualifying. This isn't just about one bad weekend. It's about something deeper. Let's pause for a second and look at the psychology behind this. Why would a driver, especially a champion, say something like that? Was it frustration, a calculated warning, or something more telling? Psychologically, public statements like these can serve two purposes. One, they can act as pressure releases. High performers sometimes voice negativity out loud, not because they believe it, but because saying it gives them emotional relief. And two, they can be silent messages, not to fans, but to the team. Almost like saying, "I'm not happy and I'm letting everyone know." Think about that for a moment. Max Verstappen, known for his control and laser focus, making a pessimistic prediction like that? That's not normal. Now, Bernie Collins, former Aston Martin strategy chief and now a respected voice on F1 broadcasts, reacted quickly. She called the comment pretty demotivating. And she's right. Imagine you're an engineer at Red Bull. You've worked late nights, you've pushed the car to the limit, and then your star driver, the face of the team, says you're not going to win another race. Not one, all season. How do you stay motivated after that? This is where team dynamics come into play. Words like Max's can unintentionally spread doubt within a team. And in Formula One, doubt is like oil on a wet track. It only takes a little to cause a major slide. Now let's look at the timing of the comment. The Hungarian Grand Prix was already filled with tension. Verstappen struggled with grip all weekend. The Red Bull didn't look like its dominant self. And to top it all off, he had that controversial incident with Lewis Hamilton again. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The two rivals clashing in the shadows of past seasons. The stewards investigated, the fans debated, but one thing was clear: Max was off his rhythm. And when drivers feel like the car is working against them instead of with them, frustration builds fast. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Lando Norris won the Hungarian GP in dominant fashion. He didn't need Max to crash out. He didn't need rain or chaos or safety cars. He simply outperformed. And that's what's got everyone talking. Because when Max says we won't win again this season, he's not just reacting to his struggles, he's acknowledging that the field is caught up. McLaren is faster, Mercedes is resurging, Ferrari is still a threat, and Red Bull, they're no longer untouchable. So here's the question we all need to ask. Is Max Verstappen just frustrated, or is he foreshadowing something much bigger? You see, words matter, especially in a sport where mental edge is everything. Champions don't just win with skill, they win with mindset. When Schumacher was behind, he never said, "We're done." When Hamilton struggled in 2022, he said, "We'll come back stronger." Even Alonso, with 2 decades of underdog fights, never counted himself out publicly. So when Max, the reigning world champ, says the wins are over, that's not just a message to the fans, that's a message to the garage, to Christian Horner, to Adrian Newey, and maybe even to himself. Now here's the real twist. Verstappen's contract with Red Bull runs through 2028, but F1 insiders know this sport moves fast, and loyalty? That only lasts as long as the wins do. If Red Bull starts slipping, if McLaren keeps rising, and if Max starts feeling like he's carrying the team more than the car is carrying him, who knows what the future holds? In the end, this wasn't just a hot mic moment, it was a crack in the Red Bull armor, a glimpse behind the curtain of a team that's dominated but might now be doubting. And in a sport like Formula One, where margins are measured in milliseconds, even the smallest doubt can spiral into a downfall. So now, we wait. Will Red Bull bounce back stronger at Spa? Will Max walk back his words, or double down? And most importantly, was this the beginning of the end for Red Bull's dominance, or just a bad day at the office? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you're a fan of F1 drama, rivalries, and the raw truth behind the grid, make sure to subscribe. Because in Formula One, the real race doesn't just happen on the track, it happens in the mind. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, global icon, the man who redefined what it means to be fast, fearless, and focused. But today, one voice says it might be time for him to walk away. Former F1 Supremo Bernie Ecclestone has just delivered a blunt message, one that's got the entire paddock whispering. Lewis is cheating himself, he says. If I were him, I would stop. Let's unpack what that really means and why Ferrari, of all teams, is now being told to look somewhere else entirely. Hamilton shocked the world when he signed with Ferrari for 2025. The scarlet red overalls, the legacy of Schumacher, the hope of a long-awaited championship return. It all felt like the final chapter of an epic story. But for Bernie Ecclestone, that move might be less of a fairy tale and more of a slow fade. Ecclestone didn't hold back. "I'd like to see him retire while he's still a hero," he said. Now, he's doing things he shouldn't be doing. He's not Lewis. Pause on that for a second. He's not Lewis. That's a powerful statement. It plays into one of the strongest psychological triggers there is, identity loss. When a legend starts acting in ways that feel off-brand, fans notice, rivals notice, and legacy? Legacy can start to slip. Bernie's words aren't just criticism, they're a warning. So is Hamilton really cheating himself by continuing? Well, it depends on how you see greatness. Some believe champions should fight until the very end. That retirement is surrender. That hunger never dies. But others argue the opposite. That true greatness is knowing when to bow out, when to protect the story you've built rather than risk rewriting it. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Ecclestone didn't just suggest Hamilton should retire. He went further. He said Ferrari should look at young blood instead. 2 names stood out, Isaac Hadjar and Gabriel Bortoleto. 2 rising stars, no world titles, no legacy to protect, but full of energy, speed, and raw ambition. To quote Bernie again, Ferrari should steal one of them. They're ready. This recommendation taps into a powerful psychological principle, the allure of potential. We are often more excited by what could be rather than what has already been, even if what has been is legendary. Hamilton is known, proven, predictable. Hadjar and Bortoleto, they represent the unknown. And in F1, the unknown can be very, very exciting. Let's not forget, Ferrari hasn't won a driver's championship since 2007. That's almost 2 decades of waiting. Every move they make now has to be for the future. And so we arrive at a pivotal tension. Do you bet on legacy, or do you bet on possibility? For Lewis, this might be the ultimate crossroads. The Ferrari move was always going to be high risk, high reward. If he wins, the redemption arc is complete. If he struggles, the narrative turns. And right now, the narrative is turning. Slowly, subtly, but noticeably. Performance hasn't matched expectation. The car isn't dominant, the clock is ticking, and the sport is evolving fast. Here's the thing about time. It doesn't ask for permission. It just keeps moving. And in Formula One, time is brutal. The new generation is faster than ever. Drivers like Piastri, Behrman, and Antonelli are showing that youth isn't a disadvantage, it's a weapon. So where does that leave Hamilton? Psychologically, this is a heavy place to be. You're still giving everything, still pushing, still sacrificing, but the results aren't there. And the noise? It's getting louder. Every legend faces this moment. The internal question, do I still have it? And the fear, what if I don't? For fans, it's emotional too. We want to believe our heroes are eternal, but deep down, we all know they're not. So, what happens next? Hamilton could prove everyone wrong. He's done it before. His comeback in 2021 was one of the most electrifying performances the sport has ever seen. But 2025 is different. The competition is deeper, the pressure is higher, and the patience, even among fans, is starting to thin. Let's zoom out for a second. Bernie Ecclestone has always been a controversial figure. Some fans take his words with a grain of salt. Others see him as a guardian of the sport's traditions. But regardless of where you stand, one thing is clear. When Bernie speaks, people listen. And when he says Hamilton should stop, it forces the F1 world to take a long, hard look at what comes next. Let's be honest, Ferrari didn't bring Lewis in just to mentor. They brought him in to win. But if that win doesn't come, will both sides start to rethink the deal? The final chapters of a champion's career are always the hardest to write. Every move is scrutinized. Every race becomes a referendum. But maybe that's what makes it all so compelling. Because Lewis Hamilton isn't just racing cars anymore. He's racing legacy. He's racing the version of himself that once felt unstoppable. And if that version isn't coming back, then Bernie's words might be more than just commentary. They might be a call to protect the myth, to exit on your own terms, to leave before the cheers become sighs. But for now, the season continues. The red suit stays on, the helmet goes back on, and Lewis, he's still fighting. Maybe that's all we can ask from a legend, to fight, to try, to give us one last reason to believe. Because if there's one thing we've learned in Formula One, it's this: never count out Lewis Hamilton. Not yet, not ever. It's not every day that a Formula One team locks horns with a major broadcaster, but Aston Martin just did. And they didn't just whisper about it behind the scenes, they took a public swipe, cutting off Sky Germany's access to their team entirely. Why? Because they believe the media coverage has been unfair, biased, and downright disrespectful. And the real story? It's about more than just Lance Stroll's temper or a few harsh words on TV. This is about power, image, and the growing tension between F1 teams and the media empires that shape their stories. Let's break it down. It started with one word: unprofessional. That's what Ralf Schumacher, a Sky Germany pundit, called Lance Stroll after his angry radio outburst during the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Stroll was frustrated, emotional, and brutally honest on team radio. But instead of brushing it off as just heat of the moment, the Sky Germany panel went in hard, really hard. Comments piled up, judgments followed, and according to Aston Martin, they crossed the line. Now here's the psychology. We all love a bit of drama in sport. It's what keeps us coming back. But there's a tipping point where criticism starts to feel personal. And Aston Martin says that's exactly what happened, not just once, repeatedly. According to insiders, Sky Germany's coverage has built a pattern of negativity, especially around Lance Stroll. And if you're Aston Martin, you start asking, are they analyzing performance or shaping a narrative? So what did the team do? They pulled the plug. At the Hungarian Grand Prix, Aston Martin reportedly blocked access to team members for Sky Germany. No interviews, no behind the scenes, radio silence. And this wasn't just a quiet protest. Sky Germany's own presenters confirmed it live on air. Ralf Schumacher openly said, and I quote, "Aston Martin doesn't like us that much." Even their lead host, Peter Hardnacke, admitted that maybe, just maybe, their coverage was too critical. But here's the question we have to ask. Was Aston Martin being too sensitive, or was the media being too aggressive? Let's talk bias. The media isn't just a mirror reflecting the sport, it's a megaphone that shapes how fans see teams, drivers, and races. And sometimes that megaphone can distort the sound. Negative headlines generate clicks, hot takes stir up engagement, and in a sport where fan loyalty runs deep, even a small shift in tone can damage reputations. It's called negativity bias, and it's a real psychological effect. Studies show that people remember negative experiences and information more vividly and for longer than positive ones. So when Sky Germany leans into drama, it sticks, especially when it's aimed at a polarizing figure like Lance Stroll. Let's zoom out. Why does this story matter? Because it reveals a power shift in Formula One. Aston Martin is no longer just a midfield team. They've climbed back into relevance. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll are now equal on points, 26 each. They're fighting for position, they're building momentum, and they're demanding respect. By blocking Sky Germany, Aston Martin is drawing a line in the sand. If you want access, give us fairness. In a world where F1 teams rely on media for visibility, but also fear media misrepresentation, it's a bold move. Some might say it's controlling, others say it's protective. But either way, it's strategic. Now, let's get personal. If you were running Aston Martin, what would you do? Would you let pundits slam your driver every weekend? Would you keep giving interviews to people who seem more interested in mocking than analyzing? Or would you say, enough is enough, and take control of your own story? That's exactly what Aston Martin did. And in doing so, they've opened a debate that F1 can't ignore. Where is the line between criticism and character assassination? Between journalism and entertainment? And most importantly, who really controls the narrative in modern Formula One? Let's not forget the human side. Lance Stroll is not just a driver, he's also the son of team owner Lawrence Stroll. And like it or not, that comes with a spotlight that's blinding. People assume he's protected, handed things, undeserving. But behind the scenes, Stroll faces the same pressure as any other driver, maybe more. And when commentators dismiss him with smirks and sarcasm, it's not just about critique, it feels like mockery. You don't have to be a Stroll fan to understand this. Everyone's got their limits. And when that limit is crossed, something breaks. For Aston Martin, that breaking point was Silverstone. So, what happens now? Will Sky Germany walk back their tone? Will Aston Martin extend an olive branch? Or has a new standard just been set? One where teams demand accountability from the media instead of just hoping for mercy. What's clear is this: F1 is evolving. The paddock isn't just about racing anymore. It's about politics, perception, and control. And in this media age, access is currency. You don't get it for free. You earn it with balance. Final thoughts. Aston Martin just made a bold statement. And whether you agree with them or not, they've sparked a conversation the sport needs. Because when the cameras stop rolling, the microphones go quiet, and the headlines fade, what remains is the question: are we watching Formula One or being fed a filtered version of it? Thanks for watching. If this gave you something to think about, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Was Aston Martin right to block Sky Germany? Or are they dodging fair criticism? Subscribe for more deep dives into the drama, politics, and passion behind Formula One, because the race isn't just on the track, it's everywhere. Imagine being one of the greatest in your field, yet feeling completely useless. That's exactly where Lewis Hamilton found himself after a devastating qualifying session at the Hungarian Grand Prix. He called himself absolutely useless and even told Ferrari, "You probably need to change driver." Meanwhile, his teammate Charles Leclerc shocked everyone by grabbing pole position. This isn't just an on-track rivalry. It's a full-blown battle of confidence, legacy, and the future of Ferrari. Let's break it all down. Saturday's qualifying was like a split-screen drama. On one side, Leclerc delivered a near-perfect lap, securing Ferrari's first major pole of the season. On the other, Hamilton didn't even make it into Q3. Moments later, he was standing in front of the cameras, clearly frustrated, saying, "The team have no problem. You've seen the car is on pole. They probably need to change driver." And then he dropped the words no one expected from a 7-time world champion: "I'm useless. Absolutely useless." The reaction online was immediate. Fans flooded social media, some applauding his honesty, others worried that the pressure might finally be getting to him. Toto Wolff, his former boss at Mercedes, weighed in. He described Hamilton's words as raw and emotional, but he didn't think Lewis was done. In his words, Lewis still has fire. Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur echoed that sentiment. He said Hamilton was just being intense, focused, demanding, exactly what you'd expect from a driver of his caliber. And then there's Charles Leclerc, the calm in the storm. When asked about Hamilton's comments, and even about the reports that Hamilton had been sharing internal Ferrari documents to help improve the car, Leclerc didn't flinch. He simply said it wasn't anything new, that it's part of the process of building a stronger team. His answer was measured, professional, and quietly confident. But underneath the calm, there's tension. A few weeks ago, former Haas boss Guenther Steiner said something that turned heads. He said Hamilton's personal brand is so powerful, it sometimes feels bigger than Ferrari itself. That's a bold claim, and one that cuts to the core of this story. Ferrari is Ferrari, a name that defines Formula One, but so is Hamilton. And when you put two giants in the same room, egos can collide. This season has already shown cracks. In Miami, the strategy team left Hamilton exposed. In Austria, there were disagreements over setups. Behind the scenes, both drivers are pushing hard to steer the team in their own direction. It's not chaos, but it's not harmony either. And that raises a serious question. Is Ferrari building a team around two leaders or just one? Because right now, it looks like Leclerc is stepping up. He's delivering results, finding rhythm, and staying cool under pressure. Meanwhile, Hamilton, who was brought in to be the game changer, is stuck in a cycle of frustration. After Saturday's qualifying, when asked if he'd return for the next race at Zandvoort, he didn't give a straight answer. He simply said, "Hopefully I'll be back." That's not a statement of confidence. That's a man questioning where he stands. To make matters more intense, Ferrari is at a crossroads with car development. There's one final major upgrade coming, a rear suspension package. If it doesn't work, the team is expected to stop development on the current car and shift all focus to 2026. So this next race, it's make or break, for the car, for the team, and maybe for Hamilton's season. Here's what makes this story truly gripping. On one side, Charles Leclerc, the loyal soldier turned leader, quietly racking up results, letting his driving do the talking. On the other, Lewis Hamilton, a legend trying to reclaim his magic, wrestling with doubt, searching for redemption. And between them, the most iconic team in motorsport history. What happens next isn't just about lap times, it's about identity. Hamilton built his legacy on precision, perfection, dominance. But now he's human, vulnerable, emotional, and that might just be the most powerful version of him yet. So here's the question for you. Do you still believe in Hamilton's Ferrari chapter? Is this just a dip in form or the beginning of the end? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like and subscribe for more F1 insights every week. Because this season, it's only just heating up.